Yippee-ki-yay, 710 KNUS listeners. It's George Brockler on the George Show 710 KNUS. Back in the saddle, both Billy and I. It hasn't been true since Wednesday of last week, and it won't be true again until a week from today. But for right now, soak it all in, folks. We are here, and it's going to be for the full 4 hours. I'm sorry if many of you thought I was going to leave sometime during the 6 or 7 o'clock hour. No, it's it. I'm here for the whole 4 hours. And you know what else is with us all day today is apparently scorching heat. It's 98 degrees today, hot and dry. I was walking around outside yesterday for reasons that escape me, and I remember thinking this must be what Phoenix is like in winter, because right now Phoenix is the anvil of the sun hot, but we're trying to catch up. 98 degrees today, tomorrow 97, Wednesday 95, Thursday. Do you see a progression here? We're sliding into 93, and then Friday and Saturday, lightning bolts shooting out of the clouds, 88s twice. Doing a little, that's 4 8s in a row for poker right there. That's 4 of a kind. I'd bet a lot on that. 88 degrees Friday and Saturday, Sunday 92. Now, I will be not here to enjoy this as of tomorrow. So 98 degrees today. I don't know what I come home to, because Monday, just looking off of this, if I had to guess, I'm going to take a wild stab. We can go back and mark the tape for later. I'm going to take a wild stab that it's going to be 93 degrees, afternoon storms, question mark. I'd like them to have question marks shooting out of the clouds. Now, listen, here's Alexa already texting in for us. Must be Monday if we're hearing the weather forecast for the weekend. That's right. And as you know, Alexa, according to our good friends at Denver 7, you can't trust anything they say ever. No, they said after 3 days, they're really just guessing. They're just making stuff up. They don't really have an idea. So by the weekend, who knows? Could be tornadoes, snowstorm. We don't know. Now, since it's been over 4 days since Billy and I were together, there's just way too much to catch up on.
Way too much.
Your excuse for abandoning the show,
'cause I'm old,
on Thursday and Friday was about something pretty cool.
Yeah, I went to see a concert.
And by the way, a lot of social media activity on that. A lot of people thrilled about that concert and how it went.
That was good. Yeah, so Tears for Fears with my wife and her best friend from high school on Thursday, and that was good. But I took the Thursday morning off because I'm old, and getting up at 3:30 in the morning and then trying to stay awake until midnight doesn't work out so well.
Do they save Everybody Wants to Rule the World for the encore? I mean, do they save it for the end?
No, the end is, it's not Everybody Wants to Rule the World is earlier in the show.
Yeah.
The last song is the song that it should be, Shout.
Oh, yeah. You
That's
know what?
The first
that was dumb
hit.
of me to even ask. You're
and
right.
although the cool thing was in the encore, they did Creep by Radiohead, which is really neat. And at one point, the audience is singing along to a point where they stop singing and they bring down all the instruments, and the audience just sings an entire verse together, which was really cool.
How long was the concert?
Oh, just under 2 hours is what they were on stage for. And Cold War Kids opened up, and they're good. Not one of my favorite bands, but they're quality live, and they do a good job on stage. I've seen them open up a number of times.
Are they like a rock country? I've never heard of them. I don't know.
You would recognize a couple of their songs if you heard them, but you wouldn't recognize them out of hand.
Okay.
But there are a couple of songs that are popular, and if their song First is the one that you probably would run across,
I'm going to have to now Apple Music that thing when I get back in the car.
And they're good, and they're very energetic, and they do a good job warming up the crowd. And so they were.
Where was the concert?
Down at Ball Arena.
Okay. That's a big venue, man. Was it packed? Was there a lot of people?
Yeah, it was pretty packed. And we were actually second deck. We didn't do the first deck stuff. So we were second deck. It was kind of nice.
Because you work in radio.
Well, because some of the free tickets have dried up. And so normally I'd be like, down closer. And so
but the cost of getting down there is ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. But the nice part was that we kind of shared the cost. And then again, us being old, we paid for the premium parking and then went to the super secret adult way to get into the concert without the long lines is you go and you eat at the Breckenridge Brewery that is right there at Ball Arena. Yes, of course. And we showed up early, a couple hours early.
Good
and
for you, man.
Some friends of my wife's were going to come down there too. So eventually it ended up being like 5 of us around a table just goofing around, eating and drinking and having a lot of fun. And the best part about it is we're like, oh, we got to finish these drinks before going in. And they're like, no, those are cups for the venue. You can take these with you. Like, I love these guys. So
is it like the 60-ounce flaming margarita thing where you can take that with you?
Not quite that, but definitely, but you're allowed to take the doubles of whatever liquor you're taking with you inside there. So,
and you did.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Did it make the underbill? I don't know what you call that first opening act. I guess the opening act. Did it make that more tolerable?
The thing is, I like Cold War kids, and I know what I was getting into. And everyone there was like, "Well, who are these?" I'm like, "Listen, we'll show up near the end because they'll play the 3 or 4 songs that you'll know. We don't need to see the first half of it because they're gonna do a lot of stuff that you don't know. So we just need to hang out halfway through. Still
Breckenridge Brewery.
Yeah, exactly. So we hung out until about halfway through Cold War Kids, and then went in to see. And they came in like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I know these songs." I'm like, "Yeah, you know these couple of songs."
Based on your pre-radio discussion with me about the event, you were also running for office. It looks like from inside your section.
It's very funny because and I forget about this. I haven't hung out with my wife's best friend from high school, Lisa, in to be 15, 16 years minimum. Dang, but she and I fall right back into that friendship, and we hung out a lot in college and when my wife and I were early dating and things. And there is a really interesting I don't know, energy between the two of us because we're very similar. And there are things that my wife there are things that my wife tells me. It's like, there are things that I fell in love with you because Lisa's my best friend. There are certain character traits that you have. One of those being making friends with everybody. We talk to anyone and talk to everybody. So by the time that we were 2 songs into Tears for Fears, we knew everybody in the row in front of us, 15 people one way, 15 people the other way. Everybody in our row, 10 people, 15 people one way, and everybody in the row behind us, 10, 15 people either way. So we're talking, we made friends with everybody. We went out, at one point, we went out to the restroom and went to the bathroom, and we missed 2 songs by Tears for Fears because we're out there making friends. We're out there talking to people. And my wife's like, we should go back inside and watch. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, we should. Because Lisa and I are just talking to people. And it was just one of those things that's just what we do. And I forget about some of those similarities that when you get the 2 of us together, how much it kind of the train goes off the rails a little bit.
But it's magic.
It is. And my wife always sits there. At one point we're sitting there and I'm talking to one group that's in front of us on the left, and Lisa's talking to this group next to us on the right, and my wife looks at me, she goes, I love this. She goes, I know everybody and didn't have to do a damn thing. She goes, but now I know everyone. She goes, this is what's fun about going out with you guys. She says it's a whole different experience than anything else. So it was a lot of fun.
That's cool, man. And then Friday, of course, you had to recover.
Yes, lots of recovery. I had to. We were out late, so that does not go well when you're this age. So had to do some recovery, and I had 2 shows to do for Westwood One that day, and then another one on Saturday, and then 2 more on Sunday. So it was a lot of other radio. And then, oh man, I told you, had to meet the daughter's
this is a moment I'm not looking forward to.
This was a tough one. But at least we did it on neutral ground. So it was
Who threw the first punch?
The funny thing is he's coming over there, and my son is sitting next to me, and he's coming over to say hi. We were at an event for a place called Second Chance Cycles, which is a charity that refurbishes bikes and gives them to underprivileged kids, gives them to homeless, gives them to vets, and gives them to people coming out of prison that need transportation. And they give them to you for free, and they give you free lock and stuff. So it was this kind of an opening, and it's a bittersweet because the woman that is running it was her father's dream, and he passed away earlier this year. So he was all trying to get this up and running. So she picked it up and completed his dream. And so there are all these posters and plaques about him and what he was doing, and TV stations did a couple of things about it. So it's really neat. And so the boyfriend was supposed to be there playing some music. And so I figured it was a neutral site, and so he could meet the dad. And my son is sitting next to me.
Weapons in the car.
Well, as my son's sitting next to me, and the dad's walking over, and so he's standing and I'm standing, and I said, "Quick!" I go, while I'm shaking his hand, punch him in the penis. And my son just laughs. And he goes, I'll do that for you.
Oh, would have been funnier if you said, and he did.
Yes, exactly.
That's ridiculous. So how, it's such an awkward thing.
It's so awkward.
Because the 2 of you have that sort of unspoken, you know it, but you don't know it thing where our 2 kids have probably done more than hold hands.
Yes.
And that kind of,
I told my daughter.
You're looking at each other in the eye. And
I told her, I'm like, you don't understand how difficult this is. She's like, what? And I said, you have to understand that I am meeting the father of the boy who is trying to see my daughter naked as often as possible. And she goes, Dad, you've made it awkward. I'm like, have you met me?
Yeah,
that's
right,
kind of what I
right.
do.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Well,
on brand.
yeah,
That's just how I see things.
That's a
Yeah.
lot there to take
Yeah, it
in, buddy.
was.
I'm not looking forward to that
Oh,
at all.
it
But
is
you know
not
what they
easy.
say, the testicle doesn't fall far from the tree.
Exactly.
So
And-
I don't know if that's true or
and
not.
it was kind of
like-
nice. It was neat to see. What I enjoyed the most was seeing the interaction between dad and the son. That told me a hell of a lot more about the relationship and about the kid
Yeah, that's cool.
than
yeah.
anything else. And that I'm like, okay, because if you can see that relationship, if it's a loving, supportive relationship, then I've got something here.
Yeah.
But if it was some tension, some other stuff, I figured that you then can think that the boyfriend eventually will take that same tension into the relationship.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly supportive. And there were some things when the boyfriend was going up to perform music, how attentive and how much help dad wanted to be, because dad does play music as well.
Oh, really?
And it was really neat to see him making sure that his son felt comfortable enough, and even adjusting some sound things and some microphones while he was playing. It was one of those dad moments. I'm like, okay, good dad. Okay, good.
Yeah, that's good.
So I
That's
felt a
good to
lot
see.
better about that.
And I wonder
So,
what he's telling
yeah.
his friends right now. Like, her dad, what an a-hole.
Yeah, what a jerk.
That guy.
Yeah.
Good Lord. He was out there gripping and grinning like he was running for office.
So what was going on there? Yeah.
He had a to-go cup of booze with him. I don't know.
This big 60-ounce big gulp. I don't know what and it was on fire.
And when it would go out, he'd light it again
Yes,
and just be like,
exactly.
hey, everybody.
Yeah, you know how they hold up the lighters in the concert? He's holding this big drink. I don't know.
Well, man, I feel good
good.
for you, and yet I don't know, man. I'm not
Yeah,
ready
no.
for any of that stuff right
It is
now.
not easy.
I don't have any sense of it. But the family stuff, listen, here's what I did. I went Barbenheimer.
Yes, my
this
son did.
weekend.
Spencer did that as well on Saturday.
Yeah.
So tell me about it. Now,
Yeah,
what did you see first? What was first? What was second?
Oppenheimer.
Okay,
So
that's what they did
Oppenheimer,
as
yeah.
well.
Jeffy and I wanted to go
smart.
see it. Trey was going to go see it with his buddies for one of their birthdays, and of course, Graham is out in DC with big sister Amanda tearing up Washington DC, and we get the pictures back, and it's just like, this guy is such a ridiculous hand. But here's where Amanda excels. She will find the old pictures from when I took the kids to DC, and I've taken them individually and collectively from back when they were like 5 or 6 or whatever, and then pose them in the exact same place at the exact same location to kind of do the side by side. So she's got one where it's Graham. It's such a I miss these days already. The little kid next to the taller kid, and she's like, is the Washington Monument getting shorter or is Graham getting taller? And so,
that's great.
And then there was a picture of Graham posed, I don't know, however he was back when he was like 5 or 6 on the Metro, and then in the exact same pose. And I'm like, this kid's getting so big. I'm missing those days. But so they're off doing that. So Trey is going to see Oppenheimer with his buddies. And initially I'd floated the idea of, hey, do you think Jeff could tag along? And then right away, I'm like, that's a mistake. I shouldn't, and I could tell Trey was like, I love Jeff, but it's a birthday party. I can't invite him to and I'm like, okay. So I'm like, Jeff, you and I'll go. We'll go.
If it was Trey's birthday party, different, but he can't invite himself
he would be invited.
Party. Yeah.
So we went and saw it, and we just had very different experiences.
Really? So I want to hear.
Yeah.
So what was your impression of it?
I liked it. I didn't know what to expect. My knowledge of Oppenheimer was pretty limited. I mean, father of the A-bomb. That's it. I mean, I really didn't have an understanding of what took place afterwards or his role in trying to advance arms control talks or whatever, the position against the H-bomb. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so I sat there and I thought, okay, it's going to be a 3-hour movie. Jeff's super excited. I'll enjoy it, So first off, let me just caution folks who might go out to the Castle Rock 12 AMC theater, because that's where we could get tickets. Trey went and saw it at Highlands Ranch AMC. They have the reclining chairs.
Oh, nice.
Castle Rock doesn't. They have far more people that get to sit in the theater, but they have the ones that just sort of lightly rock about 3 inches back.
That's not fun anymore.
Instantly, I'm sitting down and I turn to Jeff and I go, I'm so sorry, buddy. And he said, Dad, it's cool. It's fine. It'll be great. And I'm like, no. I mean, I'm really more sorry for me.
Yes,
because
exactly.
I anticipated going full recline mode.
Yes.
And I'd probably nod off somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. So ended up being awake the whole time. But I found myself oddly at a very low level riveted to the movie. Like I didn't find myself checking my phone or, getting up and wandering around to go to the bathroom and or anything like that. I was like, I want to see what's going on with the story. And then all of a sudden 3 hours is up and I thought, yep, they might've been able to trim about 30, 40 minutes off of this thing and still tell the same story. But I thought it was great. The acting was ridiculously good. If both Killian, whatever his name is, the dude that plays Robert J. Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
if that dude and Robert Downey Jr. aren't each nominated for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, then Hollywood is long dead. Then all of a sudden it's, it's Shakespeare in Love defeating Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture back in 97 or whatever that was. So
that's what my son said too. He said story was kind of long. He said acting phenomenal.
Oh my gosh.
He pointed out those two actors as well. So Robert Downey Jr. is amazing.
Robert Downey Jr., there's no trace of Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no Tony Stark in there at all. Like you look at him visually and performance wise and you're like, got it, man. This dude's really, really good at his game. There was a couple awkward moments in there where there's some nakedness, just so you know, if you're thinking about taking a kid. And I knew that going in. So had a little bit of not the talk, but a talk with Jeff, just like, hey man, I just want you to know this is there. And he's such a good boy. And he's like, well, I don't have to watch that. I'm like, son, you're going to be 16 next month, buddy. You get to start making decisions about what you expose yourself to. That was the easiest part of the conversation because then it actually pops up on screen and I realize
right there.
And I'm trying to think, man, did I ever have this moment with grandpa, with my dad? Like, oh, what do you do? There's no good reaction. Like you're not elbowing your dad, like check out Florence Pugh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where if you're with your buddies, you're like, hello,
hi there. Yes.
None of that. It's just super, super awkward for him. And I felt bad. But if I thought he was going to listen to the podcast, I probably wouldn't have told the story because he'd be like, Dad,
what are you
come
doing?
on.
Stop that.
That's great. But all in all, I thought it was great. Then we text Trey. He'd just seen it almost simultaneously in Highlands Ranch. Hey, what'd you think? And he said, I thought they could have done better. I thought they could have told the same story in a less amount of time and all that stuff.
That was Spencer's thing too. He thought, he said,
it was interesting when you told me that because I'm like, damn, that's what Trey and his friends said,
Yeah, he said the story went on at least 30 minutes too long. He said they're just kind of, he said he got to the tail end and he's like, why are we telling this part of the story? Why are we?
Yeah.
And he's like, he understood it at the end, but he didn't think that some of the narrative that was there had to be included. He thought it got a little too wandering and meandering. He said 2.5 hours would have been nice.
Yeah.
Because that would have felt like a nice wrap up but the 3 hours seemed a little bit long.
For a Christopher Nolan movie, the complete absence of action, but for the actual explosion itself was interesting. He did a really nice job. I think they did a good job of portraying Oppenheimer as this internally conflicted guy and they don't shy away from the fact that, man, this guy was flirting pretty heavily with communism early on back before World War II and, some of the meetings that he had. And it was, I just thought it was really well done. And then if you're looking for the polar opposite of that, in terms of substantive, historic, it was Barbie. And Barbie was, I don't know how to describe it. It was really well made.
Yeah.
It was entertaining, but as I told you before we got on the radio, if you are looking for something where you're going to get punched in the face with sort of a message of feminism / anti-masculine toxicity, it's there. You don't have to look for it. It's there. But can you enjoy the movie without it? Yes, I think you can. Now, listen, man, this thing is a bit of a phenomenon. You can't go to the theater without seeing tons of women and some dudes in pink.
Yeah.
Right. Like I did not don the pink thing, but I went in there and watched this thing and it was, I don't know, man. It was just really well done. There are things in it where I was like, yeah, okay, I get where you're going with this. But I thought Ryan Gosling did a good job of playing Ken, who's trying to visit patriarchy on Barbie land.
Yeah.
And Margot Robbie, who is apparently going to be in every other big movie of the next several years because she's in every other big movie. I thought it was good. Will Ferrell, I loved. The only concern I had with Will Ferrell was I'm watching him and he's still Will Ferrell funny, but I'm like, oh my God, you look like the father of the guy from Old School.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you look like Will Ferrell's father. And the eyebrows, I don't know if it was deliberate or not, were like Muppet eyebrows.
Oh, I bet that was deliberate.
And instantly I start reaching up and touching my own, like, good God, am I going Muppet eyebrows? Like you can crop dust these things? Like, because they were out of control. It was still.
Part of my eyebrows have just gone rogue. They've said, hey, we behaved for this much longer. Now we're just going to grow in whatever. Yeah.
It's a trick or something because when I go and get my hair cut, the lady's always like, do you want me to trim your eyebrows? I'm like, how can you legally let me leave the seat without trimming the eyebrows? Like, it's going to become a visual impediment. I can't drive from here.
Yeah.
It's like being eyebrow intoxicated. Like, I can't see through it. You got to get rid of that. So, you know, there were some parts of that, but overall, I thought it was good entertainment. But is there a message in there? Undeniably, there's a message.
That's what Spencer said. He said that it was light, it was cotton candy, it was popcorn. He said it was very fun. He loved how they created the storyline. He was very curious how they're going to do that. And his reaction when I talked to him about, you know, the masculinity and the feminism thing, and we kind of talked about it, and we kind of said, well, as I talked to you about before the show, is anybody really familiar with the toys? I mean, the toys are kind of like super feminist to begin with.
Well, that's the premise.
The thing. Yes,
that's
and
premise.
That is the entire thing. Is that Barbie is originally a character that is telling young women they can do anything, and she only sometimes has this boyfriend Ken, and Ken is many times more of an accessory than he is an actual character.
That plays a role in there,
and that's exactly the message. And so when people show up and go, "Wait a minute, Barbie's all empowered and pro-woman," like, have you not been paying attention to the toys?
It's true, and they play off of that. But really, what this is, and what's clever about the plot is, they take Barbie from that Barbie land where all of that is true. And then she goes to the real world and is like,
I've heard that.
Holy crap, this isn't true, right? Like, there's still all these other things. So it becomes sort of this analysis of where we are today through this, the Barbie view of, my God, Barbie land is farcical in a way. Like, that women make all the decisions, and it's a woman president and the women's Supreme Court and the women, all this other stuff. And then she somehow gets into reality and is like horrified. Now, there's definitely a feminist message in there. And America Ferrari, if that's her name, whatever her name is, has a soliloquy that will be often played again and quoted and all this about the hypocrisy between how women are supposed to be versus how they are and the expectations. But I thought at the end of the day, it was clever, man. I mean, if you're going to go in there looking to be offended, yep, it'll be there for you. If you're looking to go in there and just be entertained, you'll definitely see the message, but you could be entertained. I don't know that any kids go and watch this and come out and they're like, women's rights, men suck. I don't see any of that coming out of it, but there's
definitely
a message
not pro-China. Definitely
not
that may be the silliest controversy I've seen in the last week.
Not pro-China. The whole thing with the map, it's so fleeting, and it's dumb. Just so
stupid.
I didn't whatever. It's not like Xi Jinping Barbie or something like that. Exactly. There's nothing like that. But whatever, man. I mean, anymore, you can find whatever conspiracy / message you want and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's somewhere it really exists. I'm not telling you it doesn't exist. And I'd be interested, maybe later in the show, we talk about this, who went out and saw either of those movies and what your takeaway was, because there are messages in each of those movies. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I just thought that it was a great weekend for moviegoers, and I am a big moviegoer.
That is fantastic.
I'm a big moviegoer. I love going to the movies with the kids, and my hope is that we're able to do that no matter where they are in life, no matter how old they are and their families and all that. We can always figure out a way to go see a movie, because Dad loves movies, and this was a great weekend for going to watch movies.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is fantastic.
It was great. So,
how nice.
Listen, we're back together here, and we have not
obviously it's almost 6:30.
It's almost 6:30, which makes total sense. What you just can't have, and by the way, thanks to Geronimo for doing such a great job filling in when I was here. And then I think the next day it was Deb was in the seat here for me, and I listened to a little bit of what Deb did. I appreciate how Deb did it. But we buddy, we do it different. I don't know how to describe it. We have now, the listeners have been deprived of the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news now for days. When I was in on Thursday and you were not, I can't tell you the number of texts where people were like, what do you mean you choose the news, or where's the Thorpe Report? And I'm like, well, I don't bring the creativity. I am really just the guy that sits behind the microphone and vomits up stuff. Billy's the production thoughtful guy. I don't bring that to the table. So let's cut away for a break. We'll come back, give the listeners what they crave. By the way, you can always chime in on the text, either at 710knus.com or the 710knus app. We respond to them. I've got a few texts already, which is great. And then, of course, you can do the YouTube now. We're back on the YouTube and the Rumble. We're back on both of those things. That video is going. I'm so sorry. Listen, the weekend was long enough and hard enough. I spent very little time on personal hygiene. If it's visible to you, I apologize. Just be thankful you're not in the studio with us right now. Stick around. It's George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brocker back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's that time of the show. We get caught up on all the local news before we jump right into the super good stuff at the end. That's the You Choose the News. And then 7 o'clock, we're going to circle back around. Hell, man, we may talk a little Barbie here based on some of the texts that are coming in. You can join them at 710 KNUS or the 710 KNUS app. But let's turn it over right now to the master of ceremonies for the legitimate local news. His name is William Thorpe.
The pressure. Thank you, sir. It's good to be back. Alrighty, today.
Don't screw it up. No pressure.
I'm gonna try not
Do
to.
not screw it up.
That's kind of what I do, though. It's going to be hot and mainly dry weather pattern set up across Colorado. So it's going to be hot and sweaty. Yes, it's going to be moist in certain areas of your body that are not always pleasant. Middle of the week, there's going to be a slightly better chance of afternoon storms, but temperatures are going to stay on the high side with more 90s from Wednesday through Thursday. This will be our longest streak of 90-degree heat for the year so far. Haven't seen any triple-digit days, but we're getting pretty close over the next couple. Denver City Council is going to consider whether or not they want to extend Mayor Mike Johnston's state of emergency on homeless during today's meeting. It comes on the same day as the city's Emergency Operations Center will be active. Operations Center will bring together people from different agencies and departments to coordinate the city's response to the emergency. Under state law, his emergency declaration, which he issued last Tuesday, cannot go beyond 7 days without the approval of City Council. So they've got to give that today.
Huh?
Yeah. High housing prices are making homeownership a distant dream for more Coloradans. But on Monday, Denver City Council is going to debate more than $6 million in a grant proposal that would go toward acquiring at least 62 homes over the next 3 years to be available for affordable housing. A most recent Cato Institute 2022 Affordable Housing National Survey shows 55% of current homeowners say they would not be able to afford their home at current housing prices.
Oh, buddy.
69% say they worry their children or grandchildren would not be able to afford a similar size home.
This is what kind of polling?
It was Cato Institute Housing Affordable National Survey. So, and I agree with that. In 2022, 69% of the kids out there not being able to afford the same size house that mom and dad or the grandkids have. Yeah. Or the grandparents have.
Ever or just initially? Because initially
depends.
you don't expect them to own what Billy has.
Well, no, but I just think that I think in general, yeah, probably.
This is probably a good topic too. We got some sound from a dude from the Biden administration. We'll talk about this.
And I think that, in general, I think it would be difficult for them because we just last week talked about how the local real estate market is not going to evaluate houses under $500,000 because it's not worth the time and effort because they're gone and there's so few of them that it's not worth spending the effort doing it. And so if you're talking about people trying to get into the Denver market and you're going to have to spend more than $500,000 to do that, then I believe that it is. Then I believe that, I could see that 69% of Denver homeowners would say their kids would not be able to afford a house like theirs or their parents. Yeah. Also, people who live in certain Denver neighborhoods might be at a higher risk for hospitalization from respiratory diseases. That's according to CU Denver. Earlier this month, they announced results of a first-of-its-kind study that they published this year. They used COVID-19 hospitalization data from 2020 to talk about how neighborhood-built environments or characteristics of where you live can play a role in determining who gets sick. They actually found out that neighborhoods like Montbello, Green Valley Ranch, Globeville, El Raya, Swansea were areas where the residents were more likely to have worse health outcomes for a number of reasons. But places like Washington Park, Congress Park, and Hilltop, you would have better health outcomes, even when controlling for socioeconomic and other pre-existing vulnerabilities to COVID-19 complications. As you say, in general, worse air, worse health.
Huh.
Yeah.
Surprise.
I know. 2 juveniles are in custody and 2 others are being treated for injuries after an armed robbery and a short chase Sunday morning with police in Northland and Thornton. Northgate police say that the officers responded to a call of a robbery outside a Safeway at 500 East 120th Avenue around 11:20 in the morning. Robbery occurred outside the store, did not involve the Safeway or any of the employees. When the officers arrived, suspects were already gone, having fled an Infiniti sedan with gold wheels that was last seen headed on 120th.
You can see a picture of it upside down here on the Thornton website.
Yes, exactly. 20 minutes after the robbery call, they attempted to stop an Infiniti matching the description. A pursuit ensued. It wound through them and eventually surprise smash and car flips over. The 4 suspects, all boys under the age of 18, were in the car at the time of the crash. 2 of the suspects taken into custody. 2 others were taken to the hospital with unspecified injuries. And this is going to be a shock to everybody. Police say the car had reportedly been stolen.
What? No.
And they found a gun in the car.
Why in the world would 4 boys who are stealing a car to stay warm?
Yes, I know.
Who are clearly unhoused. Why would they then use that car to commit another crime?
It boggles the mind.
I don't get it.
I do not
understand what's happening.
Maybe we can call the professor.
We've been told.
Yes.
Maybe this wasn't their 3rd car in 3 months.
Oh, that's probably it. It's maybe just the 1st or 2nd.
They'll be let
That's
go.
the problem. Yeah. Police in Boulder looking for 2 men wanted for robbery and hit and run early Saturday morning. They say the 2 suspects robbed a man at gunpoint and then struck him with a truck. The victim called 911, transported to Boulder Community Hospital, treated for serious injuries. Happened around 4800 Baseline Road. They're looking for a white male driving an early 2000s Ford F-250. Truck had a toolbox and construction equipment in the bed. Second suspect, Hispanic man driving a mid-2000s gray four-door midsize SUV. Also, a hiker died after falling down a gully and over a cliff near Heckert Pass in Pitkin County Saturday morning. According to Pitkin County Sheriff's Office, the body was recovered by Colorado National Guard helicopter crew and mountain rescues.
They're good.
So basically, someone fell down, went boom. And a Florida woman has filed a $100 million class action lawsuit against Frontier Airlines. Alleging that the air passenger carrier engages in deceptive practices. She said they're not really a budget airline and they have a lot of hidden fees. One example in the lawsuit, she says the airline claims to offer one free personal item as long as it fits within certain dimensions. But then when you show up to the airport, they use an instrument that measures smaller dimensions. So your item that would have been okay now doesn't fit anymore, and now they have to charge you for it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And she alleges that Frontier actually gives gatekeepers bonuses for those extra late checked bags. So the more that you can prevent them from carrying stuff on, they give you a little money in the pocket. So, could be some things there. We'll keep an eye on it.
I love the idea of that. Why can't I come up with that? I could be a lawsuit guy, attorney. Yeah. I just need that kind of brilliance.
Exactly. Just to figure out.
Like it says it's 24 by 6, but it's really 23. It's like the old Subway sandwich. Remember when they could claim the foot long, but it really isn't a foot long.
No, not at all.
Dang it. And then the guy goes to prison for being a pedophile.
Yes. There were some very inappropriate things they were going to say there, and I'm not going to do anymore. That would have gotten us in trouble.
You cheated it.
Sorry. Yeah, that's all I got.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
See, that's the good stuff right there. But then the gooder stuff, and there really is gooder stuff, is coming up next. We're going to cut away for a quick break
here. There's some real good stupidity.
Do we also have a sponsor that, God willing, we can get to?
Yes. The check is cleared.
We want to get paid. We want to get paid. Stick around. George Brockler on The George Show. Coming up next, it's You Choose the News. 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
we're back here on the George Show. Got to get it on with the limited time we have left. I'm turning it over for the master of ceremonies for You Choose the News, William.
Good morning, sir. Yes, it is that time where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News, where we have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to play this fake radio news game. We've attached really stupid headlines to these ridiculous stories. Why? Well, because they haven't told us to stop yet. So until then, yes, you get to play along. All righty, we do have a wonderful advertiser today. The check is cleared, so we finally can do that. You and I can both go to McDonald's today with this wonderful, huge, giant check. All righty, sir. Here are our headlines this morning. Headline number 1, maybe don't call attention to yourself. Headline number 2, local officials hate libraries. Headline number 3, 2 words, Dragon Balls. Headline number 4, breaking the law to save the kids. All righty, your choices yet again are maybe don't call attention to yourself. Local officials hate libraries. 2 words, Dragon Balls. And headline number 4, breaking the law to save the kids.
You tempt me with the taste of nuts and honey there with the lawbreaker, because I would normally go there. But of course, trapped inside this host is a 12-year-old boy who hears Dragon Balls and says, yes, please.
Oh, excellent.
With
I'm so glad
marinara.
you chose this one. Actually, it comes with something else, because this is the story of a woman who says that when she put Dragon Balls in her mouth, they burnt her throat.
No.
Yes, this is entirely why we're doing the story, so I can say words like that. Now, this woman goes to a restaurant called Coup d'Etat. See how they cleverly did that one?
Yes, it's very clever.
And they have an appetizer on the menu called Dragon Balls. And she said, well, is it spicy? They said, well, yes, it actually is. And she said, how about a little less of the spice? And the waiter goes, okay, sure. Well, they can't really lessen the spice because the spice is rolled into the actual balls themselves. I'm going to say that as often as time this morning. And so when she actually took the balls and placed them into her mouth and decided to swallow them, or at least roll them around a little bit, they say they burnt her vocal cords and her esophagus along with portions of her right nostril because of the powder, the chili powder that was inside. So
these were not sweaty Dragon Balls.
No, they were not. They're not sweaty Dragon Balls. They would have just slid down smoothly. But this one, yeah. But this time they were not. And so she is now suing the restaurant, claiming that you should have told me that if I put my balls in your mouth,
hold on.
Then it's going to
Whose
hurt.
balls where? There's
exactly.
no way.
I
get why you chose this now,
I have
because
to say this.
it's wonderful.
Exactly. I get to say putting balls in the mouth over and over again.
Oh,
So yeah, she's suing them, saying you should have lessened the spice and everything else. But who cares? We just get to say she get to put Dragon Balls.
Oh my sweet Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Alrighty. Next choice. Maybe don't call attention to
Let's
yourself.
go with the lawbreakers
Okay,
and the
local.
kids.
Oh,
yeah.
So local officials hate libraries or breaking the law?
Breaking
the
the law,
kids.
baby.
Alrighty.
Breaking the law.
We're breaking the law to save the kids. That was resident of O'Fallon, Missouri, is saying recently. It's a small community just outside of St. Louis. And local officials are now mad at a dude who is trying to save the kids. Now, it's an older neighborhood. They don't have sidewalks. So when the kids out there riding their bikes or skateboarding or even on their scooters, they're in the side of the street. Now, this street also is a shortcut between a highway towards downtown. So people oftentimes speed through the neighborhood. This gentleman is worried about the kids, saying these speeders are not going to see the kids riding their bikes or doing their scooters, and someone's going to get hurt. They have for years asked the city, hey, can we have a stop sign? Something. Help us slow down. And they said, no, not enough people are speeding through the neighborhood for us to care. That's my interpretation of it. They basically said there isn't enough traffic, so they're not going to do anything about it. So didn't care. So this dude, Mr. Corey Starkey, got the idea. He's going to go out there and he bought those removable speed bumps. And so when the kids are playing, he puts those plastic speed bumps out in the road along with some cones. And when the kids aren't playing, he takes them away. Well, now the police in the city are super interested in what's going on in the neighborhood, but they're mad at Corey, and they're mad at him for doing that. And he's like, I'm only trying to save the kids. I'm trying to keep them from getting hit. Can you help us? Yeah, but the city says, no, not enough traffic. People can speed. Doesn't matter. All right, final choice this morning. Maybe don't call attention to yourself.
Don't call attention to yourself.
Maybe
with seconds left. Let's do it.
Don't call attention to yourself. This is about a gentleman who is driving around his Corvette Stingray and doing donuts in a parking lot. Maybe not the best idea, because when the police department came over and said, hey, why are you doing the donuts in the Stingray? They find out that, he doesn't have an active license. His license has been suspended. He also has a handgun in the car that is not his and a giant pile of drugs in the trunk. Much more than for personal consumption. So I'm just wondering the choices. The dude had drugs and a handgun, not his, in the car.
We don't catch the smart ones,
exactly,
man. We do not catch them.
Oh, well, we're going to have to, we're going to talk about it. We have a free offer for you tomorrow from the Donner Culinary Institute. That's going to have to wait until tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Listen, Lex Luthor didn't have to be a genius to avoid the bad guy or the good guys. He just had to be room temperature IQ. Hey, stick around. We're going to talk a little bit about Hollywood and that Barbie thing. I want to know if you saw that or Oppenheimer. George Brockler, 710 KNUS. It is the second of 4 hours right here on the George Show, 710 KNUS. We go all the way till 10. Then we get replaced by a guy named Chuck Kirk. 11 is Dennis Prager, and I should probably tell you right now, Dennis is coming back to town, folks, for our third annual cigar night at the View House. You can check out all the deets at 710knus.com. Get your tickets there as well. It's I went last year. I had taken over for Pete on the show. They invited me. They let me do an introduction, which I think they regret now. There's probably very little chance they'll give me the microphone based on what happened last year. Of course, Alexa was there, one of our great listeners. Many of you had shown up. Don't miss out on the opportunity this year. Go to 710knus.com and check it out. A big premium cigar thing. Dennis loves his cigars. Meat products everywhere. There's a carving station. There's alcohol involved if that's your bag. All of that stuff built into the ticket. Go out and check it out at 710knus.com. And then, of course, we have Seb Gorka, who's not coming out here for a cigar night in August. He's just going to be on air. He gets replaced by Deb at 3 o'clock. And then Stefan Tubbs, 4 to 7. Stefan will definitely be at the cigar night as well. Now, listen. This was a huge weekend for a movie lover like me, and I'm interested to know if you partook in any of the big things. It was called Barbenheimer because there was the big movie Barbie and the other big movie Oppenheimer. Very, very different movies, of course. Barbie premised on the Mattel smash doll for decades, and then Oppenheimer about Robert J. Oppenheimer, the famed father of the A-bomb, but it was much bigger than just that A-bomb thing, although I think it was done well. There's some huge stars in that movie, by the way. I mean, Rami Malek plays nothing of a role until the very end. Weird. It's almost like a cameo appearance, but then it turns into something much bigger. Matt Damon plays General Leslie Groves, who at the time that he meets Oppenheimer is Colonel Leslie Groves and ends up putting on 2 stars during the period of time that he's with him. It's a star-studded affair. Lots of big actors doing great work. Robert Downey Jr., all world in this thing. If he doesn't get a nomination for Best Supporting Actor, then there's something very, very wrong going on. And then Killian, what's his name, with the deep blue eyes, that dude rocks it. I imagine he is going to be nominated for an Academy Award as well. And then the very, very different movie, Barbie. Now, look, I took both of these things in. One, I love movies. I will go see stuff. But 2, I also knew, man, this thing's got a little bit of controversy associated with it, with the Barbie movie. It's interesting that that's true. We'll talk about the pieces of it, but really what I want to know from you, you can text in, and we already have a bunch of texts coming in about different things this morning. But if you went and saw either of these movies, and we're not a professional movie review thing, we're just people that see movies. And I know stuff, and I know what's good, and I know what's not good. I'm not big on the reviews, but it's interesting in light of how Barbie has become this political or politicized phenomenon. I went and read some of the reviews, even from Fox News. They're very interesting to me, and we'll talk about this thing too. And is this an attempt by Hollywood to try to shape a feminist narrative and an anti-masculine narrative through this popular product? I don't know. 303-696-1971 is the number, but we've got some sound that Billy has found to help set the stage for this. Billy, go with the one you like bestest. Of course, I quickly throw that to Billy without ever giving him the high sign.
And it was a Barbenheimer weekend at North America's box offices. Greta Gerwig's live-action feature Barbie was the top movie in the U.S. and Canada, earning $155 million in its first weekend of release, making it the biggest opening for a film directed by a woman. Coming in second is Christopher Nolan's biopic Oppenheimer, which made $80.5 million. The picture is about the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, who led America's development of the atomic bomb during World War II. That's entertainment. Steve Greenfield, NBC News Radio.
That sets the stage a bit. Understand that the combination of these two things, and normally you would think that studios were horrified at the idea of competing with another big budget, big title thing, but not so here. And I think smartly, because they're not, it doesn't feel like they're a close enough kind of movie. It's not like, I don't know how to describe it. Jason Bourne is competing with John Wick. You know what I mean? Or you don't have a DC superhero movie competing with a Marvel super. It's not like that. These are two such very, very different movies. And it looks like a lot of people did what I did. They did the Barbenheimer weekend, hundreds of thousands of crossover tickets that went and saw each of these movies. And they're entertaining in their own right. But keep in mind that the combination of these two, the dollar amounts that we're throwing out there, 155 million and 80 million-ish, make for the fourth largest weekend opening in the history of movies. That is amazing. It is the biggest collective box office weekend of the pandemic era, fourth overall. The others were all led by, and I'm reading this out of this Variety column, all led by sequels, huge sequels like Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Star Wars The Force Awakens, all those. And I see Billy's going right now to the I need to chime in here microphone.
Oh, you were talking about Variety, and I have got a quote from Clayton Davis.
Oh, let's do it.
Variety, and it's a real quick one, but he was talking about Barbie being kind of this unique or weird moment in time. Here it is.
This feels like lightning in a bottle right now. What we're seeing is Barbie and Oppenheimer from Warner Brothers and Universal really lean into this Barbenheimer phenomenon that was organically made through the social media channels.
Yeah, and you did that. You went Barbenheimer.
I went Barbenheimer.
Yeah, so one of my sons. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and it was very different. And frankly, I didn't tell you this part either, but the boys were more entertained. Nah, maybe not Jeff. I didn't really drill down with Jeff, but Trey thought the Barbie movie was more satisfying than the Oppenheimer one based on the length. He's like, I thought it had funny moments, and Trey's big into the funny stuff.
Yeah.
And
that was my son too.
Yeah. And he said it was just, they could have done it much shorter on Oppenheimer, and I might've thought it was better. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that was his impression too. And he said that Barbie's just it was such a fun ride. He said that he did talk about, there are some other secondary messaging, but you get that in many, many movies that if you're not looking for them, and again, for the kids, it'll run over the top of their heads. But he said it was very clever, and it was a more enjoyable time. If he had to go back and say, which would I rather see again? He said Oppenheimer's really, really good, but he'd go and see Barbie again because it leaves you with a better taste in your mouth. It's more fun, and you walk out of there just smiling, thinking that was just silly.
It's interesting too. I'm also a big movie trailer guy, so I don't like to be late, right?
Really?
Like there are folks that show up. I love watching the trailers.
To movies together.
What's that?
We aren't going to movies together.
Buddy, listen, I love the trailers, except for the new. This is totally aside from this politicized Barbie movie, but the idea that we've now got trailers that tell you the whole damn story.
Oh,
right. Like it's the whole thing in the trailer, like this Gran Turismo one. You already know the whole story, not because you know the history of it and it's based on a true story, but because they just show you every piece of the movie. Like every 10 minutes, there's a clip in there, and it just makes it seem so more unappealing to me. But I find myself sitting next to the boys on some movies. I can tell they're like, oh man, we want to go see that one. But others will evaluate it on, is it a streaming? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would you wait for that for streaming? And there are some where, like Jeff was just like, no, I don't think I care. I'm like, come on, buddy. He's like, no. And I'm just looking for things that I can, put a flag on in my head. Like, let's go see this later, or we're going to do this. And there's just
what was the one that was intriguing to you? Do you remember? What was?
I can't remember what the ones were. Gran Turismo stuck out in my mind because we both shared disdain for it. Like, Jeff was like, that's going to flop. And I go, I'm not interested in going to see it now, because now I know this kid gets from the 10 chosen of the best game players on the planet. Now he becomes the one guy they give a car to, and there's a car flip thing. And I think at the end he must win. I mean, there's just no excitement to it after they've told that story. Exactly. And, but anyway, so, in terms of the Barbie thing though, it is so very different from Oppenheimer. Each has its own political message, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing is Oppenheimer has escaped the scrutiny of being sort of this, in some ways, there's an anti-nuclear aspect to all of this. And Oppenheimer becomes that voice later in life, and you sort of get to understand how he goes through these things. But the Barbie one is unequivocally feminist, but it's brilliant in its marketing. Because I can't tell you how many people showed up in pink.
Oh, yeah.
Just showed up. And some dudes showed up in pink, too, I think, supportive. And I think this then becomes this. If you want to take your daughter to a movie that you think is empowering for her, you're going to Barbie, man. You're taking your kid to Barbie. And if you're like, well, I just want to show how modern we are and in my concept of gender roles, you might take anybody to this movie because they're touting it as it has blown up these heteronormative, which is a word I despise. Anytime you throw hetero into anything other than sexual, I'm not really interested in it because it feels like it's just more of this social gobbledygook. But we've blown up the heteronormative, view of things with this movie, and it's so good. And I've read some of these articles where they have a bunch of quotes from people, including the film's maker, who is this Greta Gerwig. And she comes right out and says, it is most certainly a feminist film.
Yeah, which again, for me, shouldn't be a surprise, is that's kind of Barbie's whole thing.
Okay, so
that as a product, that's what she does. That's Barbie's thing.
It is, but then I get these texts from people who
like
were
what?
like,
what are they saying?
They were saying things like, well, listen, Barbie in part led to all of these self-image issues that women have. Because they don't have rotund Barbie. Do you know what I mean? Like later on, they tried to grow into things, but Barbie was this. And if you look at some of the other controversy with Barbie, I think what they've done is turn Barbie into a different kind of feminist hero through this movie. Because if you look at Barbie, she had this ridiculously tiny waist like ours, but a huge chest and the appropriate hips and the long, smooth, straight legs and all that other stuff. And that it led to a generation of women who felt like they were not able to measure up. That's sort of the sense of it. I'm not saying all women felt that way, but so that there's the controversy with that. But after this movie, it feels like they have banished those demons, right? Like now Barbie is something else.
Yeah. And again, I think I look at that and my response is, it's a movie. It's a movie. It's not going to change the cultural dynamic or the conversation. It's a movie. And that's it. It's not, there's nothing.
The movie could serve a different purpose as well. It could be entertaining and, advance something. Listen, when we were in high school, man, these big patriotic movies, in my opinion, were like, Rocky IV.
Yeah.
Or some of the Schwarzenegger movies and all that other stuff.
But going and watching the Rocky movies, you never wanted to go out and become a boxer. That wasn't the thing. No, you did.
I did. Actually, Graham does. Graham loves all the Rocky Creed movies, and he bought himself some, I think maybe it was for Christmas or something. Funny. We got him some boxing gloves, and we had a heavy bag. So, no way. He likes all that stuff. But it was...
that's the thing is they don't have that they don't have that kind of cultural impact. They're more the idea of a reflection of what's going on in the culture than they're actually moving, in my opinion, many times.
Something else that jumped out to me, and I didn't know this going into the movie. I just instantly spotted it when I was watching it. There's a trans woman who plays a not insignificant role in the movie. Like she is one of the other Barbies. Like they have, President Barbie and Dr. Barbie. Well, she's like Dr. Barbie.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I mean, it's not like I have a special trans radar or something, but if you watch this movie, you instantly go, oh, that's a trans woman right there. And it wasn't, you asked me this off air. I don't think she was in the movie to say, aha, look, it's trans Barbie. I mean, it wasn't like that. It was like they were just saying, this is also a woman Barbie or a female Barbie or whatever the hell they do with the gender thing. And I have to say it was a little distracting for me. Maybe that's my own mindset, but I was thinking at the time, like, why did they go that route? Like the rest of the stuff I can get, but why did they make that decision?
The thing for me is that if they didn't highlight that individual actor or that character as, trans Ken, who's now Barbie, or Barbie the trans, if that character just played a regular Barbie character, then I think that what we're looking at it has to do with our own insecurities and our own judgments and our own reactions to that trans person, because they're presenting that person as an actress, not as something else special, but as an actress.
Isn't that gender appropriation though?
Not necessarily. And here's the reason why. And the reason I would say not is because what I think is, and probably I'd be willing to bet that the director in charge, the Greta Gerwig in charge, put that person in there for the exact same reason that you had Uhura, the first black woman on Star Trek, is that you were giving people that are trans the opportunity to see themselves on the screen as a potential actress. And that's what I think it is. Because unless there is a larger acceptance message or they point it out, then for me, they're just saying, hey, here is a person that happens to be trans that is being an actress, and that is something that you can do as well, as long as they're not like, highlighting it. And so that for me is, I have less of a overt interpretation of the idea that they're trying to send a message. For me, it's just they're reflecting where the society is at this time.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe she was the best. She tested the best. I mean, the actor's name is Harry or Harry Neff.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it, so forgive me for that. I just don't. I've never seen this person before.
Yeah.
But unequivocally, it's a transgender female. I don't know how else to describe it, and it felt to me forced, subtle maybe, but forced. Like it was an unnecessary thing. But I'll tell you the other thing too is they have other Barbies. Everybody's called Barbie in Barbie Land.
Yeah.
They have other Barbies, like they have heavyset Barbie. I don't know how to describe her, but they have big Barbie, and they have every, I think, race Barbie you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Like this is definitely an attempt to try to, I don't know. This is an attempt to try to add everything into this Barbie thing so that
okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just going to say to try to, I don't know, to take all those issues off the table or to,
and
like, because
yeah.
Barbie has typically been white. It was white Barbie for a long time. And then I think they were like, there's a bigger market than this. Let's go with something a little more multicultural. They did that. And now all of a sudden and they kind of poke fun at themselves because at one point they had, I didn't know this, but pregnant Barbie.
Yeah,
and I can't remember her name. They had growing up Barbie, and I can't remember her name too, where if you move the arm, this is in the movie, the breasts grow, and I just thought, I don't remember any of this, man, because I wasn't a Barbie guy.
I remember the pregnant Barbie, and for me, that could be the response to the idea that some of the texters have said, where this is the problem, is that Barbie was represented this way, and for the girls, you had to be that way. So in the movie, they represented Barbie in all sorts of different shapes, sizes, and colors, and said this is who Barbie is, and Barbie can be any of you girls that are sitting in the audience. And I kind of that's where I am kind of interpreting the message, is this is more of an idea, and it is a pro-woman feminist message, because that's kind of the point of the toy. That's why the toy was there in the first place. That's why we had President Barbie. That's the reason why it existed that way.
Feminist though, but within the construct of still got to be pretty attractive. You know what I mean? Still having those hot dimensions, that just don't exist in the world. And then I just looked up, buddy, pregnant Barbie is Midge.
Oh, I love that. Midge. That's fantastic.
Midge, the pregnant Barbie, and her
wonderful
husband. And there's pictures of her with her belly. And they've got, I don't know if it's Ken. Oh, no, it's Alan. Oh, my God. It's pregnant Alan and her husband, Alan. And by the way, Alan is played by Michael Cera.
Michael Cera?
Michael Cera. I'm sorry. Michael Cera.
Oh, awesome.
Brilliant role in this movie. He is so friggin' funny. In my opinion, he is a scene stealer in that movie, but he plays Alan, Midge's husband. And anyway, they've got this picture of it here, and they've got Alan dressed, the doll, Alan, different hair than Ken, dressed, pushing a stroller with like a mini-me of mini Alan in there, same hair, same shirt, same pants, same khaki pants. And then they've got pregnant Midge, all of these discontinued, but it's ridiculous.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's ridiculous. But the movie has this controversy. So I go to Fox News, and they're talking about the fact that the woman, Greta Gerwig, and all these others are touting it as this big feminist movie, which, okay, I get it. It says here, it's almost certainly a feminist film, Gerwig told ABC News Australia. It's feminist in a way that includes everyone. I don't even know what that means, but that's her description of it. And then there's this Harry Neff says, as much as there's a celebration of femininity and being a girl in this movie, I think there's also an encouragement of letting go of the checklist we ascribe to living and living your life and being in your body your way on your own terms. That to me strikes at this whole notion that gender is whatever you want it to be. And we've talked about that before. Now, Shang-Chi, the dude who was the Marvel superhero who was like Kung Fu master or whatever with the rings of damnation or whatever that he used to, That dude is also in this movie. He plays one of the many Kens, also very funny. But he says, I'm glad this movie exists because I think it puts the final nail in the coffin of that very heteronormative idea of what gender is and what is or is not gendered. I have no damn idea what he's talking about there. But if this is an effort to try to move towards a genderless society, I don't think we're there. I don't feel like we're there. By the way, it's only in the context of transgender, and this only comes up to me as we're talking about it, that you could be one thing, claim to be another. Not only will Hollywood accept you, but promote you, and they don't blanch at all at that. But if you said, I'm feeling a little African-American today, I'd like to go blackface in this movie, you would be over in a millisecond. And if Hollywood were to put you in a movie where you portrayed the role of an African-American and you weren't black, people would lose their freaking minds, and they would call that cultural appropriation.
Yeah, and I also think, though, that there's a secondary layer to that because of how blackface was used and how it was been presented in our society early on, and it was done very racially. But here's the Fox and Friends group over the weekend, Rachel Campos Duffy and the others reacting to Barbie, and Rachel does not like the movie at all.
I might see Oppenheimer, but
isn't Margot Robbie just stunning?
She is.
She just
listen. By the way, my podcast, we break down the Barbie movie, whether you should take your little girls to watch it or not, because there's a lot of adult themes and a lot of. It's an interesting breakdown. I do it with my husband, and also my daughter joins us on that show. So that's a good one to check out.
It's something where maybe you just have conversations, like you can see it, but then have a conversation so they understand it. Or do you look at, say, no, let's just stay away from that?
Well, I think that moms should go see it themselves first and then decide. I think that's because I personally am very upset. I love Barbie. There are like probably 100 Barbies in my house as passed on through the years that all my girls play with.
Right there.
And this movie was made by a bunch of joyless feminists who actually hate Barbie. So that's the problem I have with it.
That could be a problem. Could be a problem.
But anyway, you could check that out on From the Kitchen Table.
Is she right? Is she right that it was made by joyless feminists? And for me, I'm hearing her, and I'm like, you didn't get the point of the toy. You missed the entire message, Rachel. When you were a little kid playing,
they may be joyless feminists, Billy, but they don't hate Barbie. I think they're trying to take whatever Barbie was intended to be and bring it into a current context. That's what I think that they're trying to do. But are they joyless feminists? Don't those things strike you as synonymous? I think
it's interesting that that's how she discounts the writers when everybody else is like, this is a fun movie. This is silly. And she's like, joyless. How is it joy? I haven't heard anybody come out and go, it is a joyless movie.
303.
Anyone say that?
Yeah, 303-696-1971 is our number. And once again, Billy, we have just 6 o'clock hour, the 7 o'clock hour. I don't know what we're doing anymore. I'm not sure. Let's just try to do a whole 4-hour show without a break and see how long it takes for Mark to be sent in here with a gun. You know what I mean? To Billy, you will go to the breaks right now. We got to cut away to a break. I want to get to your calls on this one. Did you see Barbie or Oppenheimer? And would you go see Barbie? And if not, why not? If you're just not interested, that's one thing. But if it's, hey, I don't want to be confronted with this message, or I wouldn't take my kids or my grandkids to go see it, I'd love to have that conversation with you. 303-696-1971. I saw it. We'll talk more about that when we come back. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Want to Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brocker back with you here, 710 KNUS. Got some texts here on this Barbie topic. Someone texted in, and I talked about the blackface thing and the fact that is this whole transgender character Hari Neff, who's Dr. Barbie in the movie, which I thought was an interesting choice, by the way. It had to be the dude that was the doctor, the dude that became a woman. But I had said, hey, blackface. Billy had his take on that. And then someone texted in, unless you're Rachel Dolezal. True there. I mean, that's cultural appropriation for Rachel. It wasn't blackface, but it certainly was awkward. And it felt like a lie, right? But for these other things, I don't know. That's its own issue. But here's one. Barbie is both feminine and feminist at once. That's why she's perfect. That's an interesting take on that she is both feminine and a feminist. That's true. I think that's absolutely true. During our conversation, someone else, great sense of humor here, texted in inclusive Barbie. And is there an OnlyFans Barbie? I think that's coming up in the future, OnlyFans Barbie. I think, do you remember back in the day where there were Smurfs? And Smurfs were of every occupation, like you had lawyer Smurf and doctor Smurf and firefighter Smurf. And it feels to me like Mattel could be on the verge of a Barbie revolution that either could be something like that. And they sort of went down that road already, but maybe it's ordinary Barbie, which comes up during the movie. And there's other, I don't know, maybe there's trans Barbie out there in the future. I don't know. Here's something. This is the caller or the texter that said both feminine and feminist. I said, hey, just call in. I'd love to have that conversation. Wish I had a few minutes to call in. I'm on the way into breakfast with a couple of handsome pilots. One is going to buy me breakfast. Hello, right there. Probably women, because handsome is gender neutral. No, I'm kidding. I want boob job Barbie. There's also this the same texter. Remember Saturday Night Live doing the skit Trailer Trash Barbie? Yes, I do. That's also a brilliant reference. Another one, don't forget about Trailer Trash Barbie. Comes with a pack of Marlboro Lights and a dirty baby slung on her hip. Goggle it. And I think you mean Google it. We should. Billy, if you find any sound from Trailer Trash Barbie, we got to do that. And here's another question from a texter. It's our buddy Janet. Are they selling all those other Barbie dolls, though? I presume they're not selling the discontinued one. Alan is still the best one. I'm hoping Joe from Arvada weighs in on Barbenheimer and then turns it into a discussion about MAGA. Here's another one. Yep, buildings not built. This was a different reference. I went to see Oppenheimer, for sure would not be caught dead seeing Barbie. That's interesting to me. That's interesting. They also said Barbenheimer was really good. Not the best film ever. Acting was great. Story was gripping. I thought the story was gripping as well, but I'm interested why you would never go see it. And here's why I say that. First off, it is genius to me the way that this thing has been put out there initially with all the pink stuff and all that. But folks, I don't know if you know this, but it's making a ton of money. So there was one thing in particular that struck me about this Fox News article about how politicized and feminist and anti-male and all this other stuff was. And there was a quote in here that says, that Barbie really had an opportunity here to play to an existing base, basically of Barbie lovers. But then it says that they really lost out on the opportunity to get millions or hundreds of thousands of families to go see this movie. And I thought they did get. I'm telling you, when I went there. I should have mentioned this in the description. It wasn't just pink clad folks. It wasn't all adults, man. There were some folks there with their kiddos. And I agree with the take that you need to talk to your kids ahead of time or screen them from. There are some adult, discussions or references in there, but there were a lot of kids, man, that went to this movie. It was interesting to me. And the fact that there were multicultural Barbies. There were also multicultural Kens. You know what we didn't see, though? And maybe this is interesting, too. There was that Hari Neff as the transgender woman who played Dr. Barbie. I don't recall seeing any transgender males in the role of Ken. And maybe that says something, too, that maybe their goal there was to show that Ken was just a much more limited. But here's a clip from Candace Frederick out of this article. As great as it is to see Barbies and Kens played by Black, brown, Asian, and or queer actors, as well as those that use wheelchairs. Oh, there is a wheelchair Barbie too. That I should have remembered that. That stuck out in my mind too. This remains stereotypical Barbie's world. It's her story, her boyfriend, her activation, and her feminist motives, with other characters merely sprinkled throughout the deliriously funny one-liners and necessary assists. That's a pretty fair description, I think. It's and then comedian and actress Kate McKinnon. I'm a Kate McKinnon fan, but there's no doubt she's way left of where I am politically. And there's probably the best example of that is if you remember after the 2016 election, the cold opening was Kate McKinnon playing Hallelujah at the piano unaccompanied. And it was sort of this very dark, my God, I can't believe we lost to Donald Trump thing, but she's clearly a funny woman, a great funny actress. But she also believes that this was a movie that was designed to be designed to be feminist. Joan has hit it out of the park on this one. Now, normally Joan is good for some good current eventsy political stuff, but here's the one she proposes, Billy. It's breastfeeding Ken. Where is breastfeeding Ken? Sounds genius. And then Joan says she's not going to go see Barbie because it's CRT and pink. Maybe. But I don't know. I mean, listen, I kind of want to go see it. I know people are like, I don't want to put any money in their coffers. Your money isn't going to make any difference, right? But you could go and see it and then be more critical of it. 303-696-1971 is the number. We'll go to Jennifer. Jennifer, you're on 710. Did you see Barbie or Oppenheimer, or are you going to see them?
I think I'm going to go see Oppenheimer. Quite honestly, I have no interest in Barbie.
Really? Why
and
not?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me.
Because, so some of my friends have seen it and have told me about the social commentary with it. It's not something I want to spend my money on because
sneak in.
I disagree with Bill on some of his premise that Barbie was empowering women. Barbie came out in 1959, and like you have referenced, George. Thank you.
Yeah.
You understand women so well.
Yeah, of course. I've never been accused of that, but go on.
Disproportionate body size. And you know what? I don't really care. It's not that I'm on some kind of righteous roll on this, how unfair Barbie was growing up with. But Barbie came out in 1959. My sisters had them, and I sort of inherited some, and maybe I got some. President Barbie didn't come out till 1992. And then they didn't start addressing they didn't start addressing really the dimensions of Barbie until 1997. So there was a generation of women that grew up thinking that they had to be the dimensions of Barbie to be socially acceptable. Okay, I might be taking that a little too far. I get it. Like I said, I don't really care. But, to say that it was about empowerment, I mean, Barbie was about being a stewardess or other things like that.
Well, they did have Dr. Barbie and all that other stuff. I mean, I get it's 92, but Jen, that's 30 years ago. I mean, 30 years ago, they had President female Barbie. That's long before Hillary Clinton was even a thing. I mean, she was just the first lady of Arkansas at the time. And I say just, she was also an attorney at the very corrupt Rose Law Firm and probably murdered Vince Foster. No, I'm kidding. But she was not, no one was looking at her like a future president or anything. That took a long time. Barbie was out front. Very Geraldine Ferraro. Maybe it was during the period of Geraldine Ferraro, but that's 30 years ago.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton didn't have 30 dimensions either.
No, she just, well, there's a good point right there. You're going to go see Oppenheimer. Good, worth it. I would say go see the Barbie one. I'd be interested in your take, especially after your buddies have already poisoned your mind against it. And some of these reviews do too, but I just think we ought to go take a look at it. Jen, thanks for the call for getting us kicked off this morning. And that's it then. I guess you just bet. That's okay. I get it too. Last thing I'll say before we cut away for a break and then get joined by the smarty smarts at Alpine. Here's our buddy Alexa. I heard the opening scene of Barbie was a symbolic baby killing scene teaching young girls not to be mothers. Is that accurate? I wouldn't describe it that way at all. It was an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you remember that opening scene with the chimpanzees or the monkeys or the apes or whatever they were, and they're all just kind of living their pretty primate life there and picking around the bones, eating food. And then the monolith shows up, and it's kind of like knowledge. Maybe it's the fruit of the forbidden tree or whatever. And all of a sudden they get violent and they start beating each other and killing each other with the bones and all that other stuff. That is this scene. It's just Barbie is the monolith, right? And Helen Mirren is the narrator that comes in over this thing. And I didn't see it as teaching baby killing or that being mom was wrong. It was just that all the dolls up until Barbie were only about tea parties and being a mother. That was my sense. And that Barbie broke that mold and then became something more. And it was these kids smashing the other old limited, baby dolls and all that. I didn't see it as teaching kids to want to kill kids or reject motherhood. I just didn't see it that way. But the discontinued Barbie, maybe that was it. Midge, the pregnant Barbie. Listen, we're going to cut away for a break. We're going to get joined when we come back by Amy Duncan from Alpine Planning. Maybe Amy saw it. I don't know. We'll ask her. We'll build in some time for that. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here, 710 KNUS. No time to lose. Let's get to the Smarty Smarts from Alpine Planning. If it's Monday, it must be our friend Amy Duncan. Amy, how are you?
Good morning, George. Not bad, sir. How are you?
Living the dream. How many times?
You're a Barbie fan. All of a sudden, huh?
You know, if you say that out of context of the movies, it makes me sound super creepy. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be quite the show. I have not seen it yet, but I think that my time is coming. So.
When you
Actually,
do, I want to have you back on to talk about it. But you're going to talk to us about money.
Yep. Here we go. All right. Well, looking good to start the work week. Currently, we got green numbers across the board. Dow's up about 90, S&P positive as well, up 11. NASDAQ just turned negative, but not by much. Last week, nice week for markets, and it was actually the 10th straight session daily gain for the Dow, which is the longest streak in almost 6 years. So 2 consecutive weeks of positive numbers for the blue chip index. And it's interesting because we see utility, healthcare, finance, and energy stocks have actually been the worst performing sectors this year, but they've led the rally so far in July. So if it seems like this is a recent shift, it is. This is a big week, though, big week economically. Obviously, we've got the Federal Reserve meeting midweek, and then more than 150 of the S&P 500 companies report their Q2 earnings. Just to name a few, we've got Alphabet, Microsoft, Visa, General Motors, General Electric, Verizon, Waste Management.
Holy
so it's going to
smokes.
be a large basket of goods, so to speak. And I think just as a kind of a wrap up here, sir, you know, keep our eye on big market moves based on these blue chips. But I mentioned this last week, you know, don't make any big moves based on either greed or fear, right? When we've got earnings season, you see a lot of individual companies leading the headlines. And yet it is a really a nice opportunity for investors to rebalance, take some of the gains off the table, maybe do some tax harvesting and raise your income, plan for your income 12 months out based on market moves. So right now, Brian and Gabe and I are just keeping our eye on the Federal Reserve this week. And if anyone needs some custom advice, give us a call.
I was going to ask that question, Amy. What's a bigger deal, the Fed or the announcement of all these giant companies that you read a partial list of?
Economically, I would say, from a market standpoint, economically, you know, the earnings are the core. Earnings are absolutely the core. So I view those as more important. But from an optics standpoint, from an optics and kind of an individual retail investor, you know, the Fed has been the leading headline for going on 18 months now. The nice thing is I think that people have begun to price in the changes that they're going to make. My expectation would be the 1/4 point hike this week. And I think a lot of people are expecting that. But again, you know, we've seen bond prices kind of adjust. We've seen regional banks deposits stabilize. So earnings are more important, but the Fed will take the spotlight. That's my opinion.
Brilliant. Alpine Planning Group is a comprehensive financial planning firm committed to improving your long-term financial success. Investing, it's a matter of trust. They're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918, 303-843-0918. Amy, great job as always.
See you, George. Have a good one, bud.
You too.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
Now, listen, something happened on Friday while we were out of the saddle involving a case we have discussed in detail and will again. Her name's Robin Nicetta. How could things get worse? Let's find out from her victim, Danielle Jurinsky, when we come back. George Brockler, 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here, 710 KNUS. We're halfway through the Monday show. As you know, I'll be out for the rest of the week doing a little bit of military stuff. I think we're going to have John Caldera, Pete Boyles, and Jeff Hunt do the honors over the next however many days. Looking forward to that. I just won't be able to hear it until the podcast. You keep them engaged, by the way. Keep texting and calling them. Make it uncomfortable for them to run their own narrative, just like you do here. Listen, we've got news to talk about. It happened on Friday during Stefan's show. And once again, I'm always jealous about that dude because he has a pretty good spot. We get the good spot here this morning where we get the stuff after the weekend. Stefan's got a pretty good spot there because he gets what happens at the end of the day. There's a case involving a really horrible human being named Robin Niceta. There's no other way to describe that. It would be hard to imagine her doing something good. Like she would stop to pet a puppy if she could pinch it on the face, you know, that kind of thing. Like there's no upside I can see to this human being, but something happened in terms of her woes. They have increased a bunch fold. And to help us have that conversation is our own version of Kick-Ass Barbie. It's Danielle Jurinsky. Councilwoman, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Hey, a question for you, by the way, before we get into the good stuff. Have you seen the Barbie movie? Would you go see the Barbie movie?
I have not seen it. I went to see Oppenheimer last night,
Ooh,
but
good
the
one,
Barbie
huh?
movie and Sound of Freedom are still on my list.
Okay, now the Barbie movie, we talked about this in the last hour, a little bit of controversy because of the feminist thing and the this and the that. Does any of that stuff discourage you from seeing it? Are you like, hell no, I'm going to go see this thing?
No, not at all. People take everything too seriously nowadays.
I agree with you. Someone who may not have taken her circumstance seriously enough, but is being brought to that realization is a woman named Robin Niceta. Something happened on Friday. For those that weren't listening to Stefan's show, tell us what happened.
She was arrested outside of her home in New Mexico, indicted on 10 charges, and Sandoval County Sheriff's Department got her. And there was a news crew down there that got the whole footage. And at the very last second, I mean, you're not going to believe this, what she did, George.
Fake
the very last
attack.
second, she tells the sheriff that she's going to kill herself. So instead, they had to take her. Yeah, they were loading her into a cop car. They had to stop, get an ambulance, load her into an ambulance. And, you know, she went to the hospital instead of the jail right away. But I did get confirmation by Friday night, later Friday night, she was actually in the jail. So I felt very good about that. Her mom is still sort of MIA right now. She's also indicted on 4 charges, 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. I guess someone called in because Sandoval County notified us over the weekend that she plans to turn herself in today, sometime today. So we're kind of just waiting around for that.
I think Billy found a little bit of sound from the News 7 story. They've been really covering this thing pretty aggressively, or maybe it was CBS. I can't remember. Billy, whatever you got, play what you have.
Karen will join us in a moment. First, breaking news. CBS News Colorado has confirmed former Arapahoe County social worker Robin Niceta has been indicted on 10 new criminal charges. That's for allegedly faking a cancer diagnosis to avoid prosecution. Niceta was initially facing charges for allegedly filing a false child abuse report when she was a social worker last year. Investigators said she filed that false report as retaliation against an Aurora City Council person. That person spoke poorly of Niceta's girlfriend at the time, former Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson. Prosecutors believe Niceta tried to evade criminal proceedings in that case by faking a cancer diagnosis. Now, investigator Katie Weiss has learned it's prompting a host of new charges against her. So, Katie, this was a grand jury decision that came down today.
Yeah, that's right, Michaelia. And actually, court records show that a grand jury with the 18th Judicial District is not only indicting Niceta, but they're also indicting Niceta's mother, Janice Dudley, for her alleged involvement in the fake diagnosis. Now, court documents show they are both facing charges, including attempting to influence a public servant, tampering with evidence, and forgery. Now, we spoke with Niceta and her mother earlier this spring about her supposed cancer diagnosis, and they provided us these photos of Niceta's alleged brain tumor. You should be seeing them on your screen here shortly. After our story ran, we heard from many people concerned that the photos may have been fabricated. Prosecutors said they too then heard from concerned citizens that the cancer diagnosis may not have been real.
Billy, that's plenty. Now, Danielle, there's some irony to that, right? Because now Channel 4 is like, we ran a story earlier.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Tell us that story for those folks that haven't been following it, exactly what happened.
Well, Lord. So when this all first started, I mean, George, I was very much on an island, and you remember I was texting you.
I do.
I was panicking. I'm like, George, this is a lie. She's lying. I know she is. I realize that's not just like automatic proof, my gut feeling, but this woman is lying. Why can't I get anybody?
It was more than that too. It was in the context of, remember, at the time, the Denver DA's office started showing signs of like giving up on the case and being like, well, we might just plead this thing out. Sorry.
So this is what I'm saying is I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. And that's when I started panicking, reaching out to you and reaching out to some others like, hey, what can I do? The defense attorney, they stated that the family gave them these medical records. That to me was the first red flag. I said, wait a minute. These didn't even come from the doctor, him or herself? Are you serious?
Right.
Then the prosecutor, I couldn't even get him to look into it. He tells me, Danielle, I have reviewed these medical records myself, and this is a grave condition she is in. I feel comfortable. I don't care what you feel. Do your job. You're a prosecutor, not a defense attorney. Do your job, because I'm telling you, this woman is lying. Any woman that can make up such egregious lies like she did to me in the first place is 100% capable of this. The icing on the cake was CBS Colorado and Brian Moss, who, after the last court date, when they started pushing, to possibly dismiss this case and delay it inevitably, I walked out of the courtroom and I went up to the cameras and I said, I hope everybody listening understands this woman is lying. I intend to prove it. I'm not sure how, but I'm going to. Brian Moss, calls me up, Danielle, she really is sick. I said, Brian, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, Brian. Well, he comes over to one of my restaurants, brings a camera crew, brings these medical records. And of course, George, I'm not going to be seen running on camera, right? So I take a seat.
Hold on. Did he let you know he was coming, or was it just sort of like a surprise?
Well, he let me know that he was coming, but it was sort of a surprise the way he came at me.
He didn't tell you what he was going to grill you on. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, not really, not completely. And so, we're sitting at a table. And he puts all these medical records in front of me, and he spreads them all out. And George, I was even more convinced. I'm like, and he has his glasses on the tip of his nose, and he's looking at me over his glasses, scowling at me. Danielle, don't you think you're being harsh here? These are medical records. You're denying medical records. And I'm looking at these pieces of paper, and I'm looking up at him. I said, Brian, you have got to be joking. Like, you are joking, right? And he tells me, I spoke with them. I spoke with the family. I saw Robin. I said, oh, via Zoom? Or did you go to New Mexico? Well, via Zoom. I told him, I said, there's no chance these are medical records. I'm certainly not a doctor. But there's no letterhead, no hospital name on these. There's no signatures. They're missing dates. I noticed on the prescription list, the prescriptions didn't have dosages next to them, like little things. I noticed typos, like misspellings of what. Like, I noticed all of this, George.
Brain was spelled Brian. It was a Brian tumor.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, they're calling Brian Moss Brain Moss in the medical community now on the subreddit thread. They're calling him Brain Moss.
Oh, poor Brian.
So I'm telling Brian, do some investigation. Have you spoke with a doctor oh, this is real. And so the arrogance of CBS 4 to now turn this into after our story aired, people started reaching out to us. How about the person who was telling you before the story aired, to please go look into it? Instead, Brian Moss runs this show, runs this story, making me look like this mean person that, you know, now I'm being mean to a woman who's dying, and he gets this video footage of Janice Dudley, Robin's mom, saying, you know, people who don't know anything they're talking about really shouldn't be talking, which I'm gonna throw those words
turns out
back
there
at
was a
her the
little
first
bit of
time I see
irony.
her.
Yeah, that was ironic, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Yes. And but since then, the kicker is they're still reporting this as if there's some hero in all of this. They have not even updated that story to now
Online?
include that she has in fact, hasn't been updated.
Did they update it
have
at
not
all, or at
updated
least
it.
do a follow-up story with, and by the way, investigation has revealed that the medical facility doesn't exist and nobody can track down any doctor anywhere near Mexico with that name, New Mexico with that name.
No.
Huh.
No. The next story they did was that mandatory court date where they hauled us all in. You know, the one where you walked in with Robin Niceta, that one.
Yeah, I did not walk in with Robin Niceta. It was the worst timing ever.
They showed that footage all weekend, George, by the way. That
for
was
the love
great.
of
I mean, you
God.
definitely looked like you were representing her.
Good
But that court date, CBS showed up. And of course, Brian Moss is nowhere to be found. They sent this Katie Weiss, and she goes out and does her story. Thanks to us, thanks to our story. I mean, that's all they. That's
But
all
that's
they've said.
true. In a weird way, that's true. Talk about taking lemons and making lemonade, because they put out that provably now proven false story and that narrative attacking you. Because they did that, you're right. Some doctors came forward, especially that one guy whose name escapes me, Danielle, that not only reached out to you, but apparently reached out to the judge and was like, hey, man, there's some fraud afoot here.
Well, and the reason for that, and this is why I just am forever going to be sour grapes with CBS News. It would have been fine if they would have done like a fair story, but they didn't. They did not do a fair story. They absolutely made me look like just an angry, bitter person that was going to attack Robin on her deathbed until the very moment she died. So there's a horrible story that was put out. Horrible, absolutely tainted. But then what Brian did, what CBS 4 did when the story first came out, and doctors on Twitter commented on Brian's story and said, hey, and who you're talking about is Dr. Eric Strong from Stanford University of Medicine.
Never heard of it, but
he comments and he says, hey, physician here, just want to let you know, with all certainty, those are fake images. I hope this person gets the book thrown at her. That's her comment. His comment. He's not attacking Brian.
Yeah,
he's not. These doctors are just like, hey, so what does Brian Moss do then? He goes back to Janice Dudley and then comes back to his story, issuing an update about why the images appear photoshopped. So then he goes, and he's now battling the doctors.
We should thank Brian for that, because all of those things combined provide evidence for what took place on Friday.
Well, sure. I mean, I think the evidence, would have spoken for itself. But regardless, I believe Brian Moss needs to surface. I believe he needs to surface. That day that he questioned me, that he caught up to me with the camera crew with these medical records, I said to him, I said, you've sold your soul. I said, would you become friends with Janice Dudley? You want a story so bad? You sold your soul and you've become friends with Janice Dudley? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And the way he treated me and talked to me, he needs to surface and he needs to update his original story.
We are talking with Mess With Me and I'll Kick You in the Junk Barbie, Danielle Jurinsky, about the events that led up to this stunning, although somewhat predictable outcome. You and I knew what was going on behind the scenes and whatnot, but on Friday, an indictment came out from the 18th Judicial District. And that's important too. I don't know that people are tracking this, but the original case that grew out of your victimization by Robin Niceta was sent in essence to the Denver DA's office as special prosecutors, in large part because at the time the DA for the 18th, John Kellner, who you and I know well, said, hey, I've got Robin Niceta on 8 billion different cases as a witness. I can't be both, the person that prosecutes her and does all this other stuff. So Denver gets involved. But now that we've had this extra alleged criminal conduct where Robin has tried to defraud the court, now the 18th can re-engage. I think all those cases that she was a witness on have all been resolved or gone the way of the dodo or something like that. But now the 18th is prosecuting this separate from Denver. Does that sound right?
That is right.
Did you have conversations? Have you had conversations with the 18th in the context of your victimization? Because in part, you're definitely a victim of the case that Denver's handling, but you are sort of a tangential victim of the case that the 18th is handling. Have they treated you like a victim for purposes of this prosecution?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, kept me in the loop, and but essentially, the victim now on these indictment charges are the people of the state of Colorado, and so, and that's fine. I will still be at every single court date. I will be there for both Robin and Janice's appearances.
Listen, the thing that people ought to know about these charges is that, yes, there's these 10 felony charges, but to put it in context, not a single one of them, I don't think any of the charges, by the way, Danielle, that she's facing promise prison. And that's a real problem here in this case. I think there's no way she can escape these without going to prison, but there's no promise of prison. So she has attempt to influence a public servant. I presume that's the prosecutor in the case and the judge. That's a 4th-class felony, but it's a non-mandatory 2 to 6 years. It's a probation-eligible 2 to 6 years. Forgery, depending upon how they charge it, likely a 5th-class felony, could be a 6th, and then tampering with physical evidence, a 6th-class felony because it involved a felony case. None of those carry with it the promise of prison, and yet I feel like there's no way out for her except prison. The only 2 ways I think this thing resolves at this point is by her agreeing to go to prison for a long time, which I just don't know if it happens. Or honestly, Danielle, and you and I kind of hinted at this in the past, and I'm not rooting for it. I'm just saying it's a reality. She could take her own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have been warned about that, from people that have been around a long time doing detective work and in the justice system. And they did have a conversation with me and say, Danielle, we just want to make you aware, these are some of the things that could now start to happen. And that was one of the things that was said to me. And, I've said it before and I'll say it again. And especially I said it when she was, quote, dying of this brain tumor to begin with. I don't wish death upon her. I want to go to court. I want to have my day in court to address her face to face. Her killing herself is the coward's way out. She deserves to do the time for the crimes that she has done, and I want to face her in court.
Yeah, I agree. The other piece of this too is, whenever somebody does something horrible like this, if you're like me at all, you tend to think in terms of, okay, listen, they need to be held accountable for that. They're a horrible person, but they are somebody's daughter. Here, the mother of Robin Niceta appears to have participated in this fraud against the court and against justice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm telling you. Well, and they're looking for the sister right now who is wanted for allegedly stealing a vehicle in New Mexico. They can't find the sister. The sister reached out to me via Facebook on Friday. So I let Sandoval County Sheriff's Department know she is active on Facebook. I think it's the whole family, George. I think it's the whole family.
Hold on. There was one other part that I think you and I laughed at for the same reasons, but Niceta's attorney, Frank Moya, who's been in the business a long time. He's a well-known defense attorney. He's been doing this since, he'd been doing it a long time when I was an intern 100 years ago. But he complained in the media about the fact that law enforcement didn't just give her the opportunity to turn herself in. Instead, they went to her place in New Mexico and arrested her there. That, to me, I smiled when I read that, like, you got to be kidding me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, his words were, "That is justice by ambush." That's what he said, what he was complaining about. I mean, look, for Robin alone, this is 7 new felony charges and 3 misdemeanors. And what you're talking about, what you mentioned about possibly, you know, not even going to prison, which I don't think can happen anymore. But this all started with 1 felony charge and 1 misdemeanor charge and no prior criminal record for Robin. So at that point, I was made very aware that it was a possibility that she sees no jail time whatsoever. And now look at the hole she's buried herself in.
Yeah, listen, this is a case from the very beginning when we talked about it. I had said this cries out for prison. There has to be incarceration here because of what's at stake in terms of the integrity of the DHS system and what they do, because they do exist for a good reason. It's just now we've seen how they can be turned. Just one corrupt individual, if not more than that, can just turn the system against parents to take their kids away from them and make their lives a holy living hell. So this is a case that cries out for prison. We've got to say, but that was before the fake brain tumor and before the attempt to manipulate the system. And the part I thought that was so funny is Frank's like, why didn't we give her a chance to turn herself in? Are you kidding? She tried to beat the system before by faking a brain tumor. You wouldn't trust her with anything.
I know. And he's so dumbfounded after, you know, he came on and we had that last court appearance where the defense attorneys were desperately trying to get themselves off of the case. He comes on and he tells Daniel Cohen, Denver DA, he tells Daniel Cohen, well, I can't even imagine this gets to trial. We'll be looking forward, you know, to a deal. I'm sure we can reach a deal here. And Daniel Cohen looked at him and said, essentially, welcome to this case. You might want to read up on what's going on.
Right.
There will not be a plea deal offered at all. And he said that Frank Moya just looked at him just so confused. Confused.
Listen, I love it from the standpoint that the prosecutor in Denver is now born again hard. You know what I mean? Like there was a time where it sounded like he was like, yeah, we'll get it worked out. And man, she's sick. Maybe she won't go. And now he's like, oh, you're going down. I got to believe part of that is, and you and I talked about this on air, I got to believe part of that is dude got pantsed in the courtroom by the judge. You know, when this whole thing broke, the judge was like, can I throw out some things to you that were red flags to me? And I'm not a doctor either. And he went through some of the things you did. And it was like, OMG, what just happened? This is craziness. But I will tell you once again, this is the kind of case, and I haven't done it yet, where I will text John Kellner and beg him to rehire me just for this case and the dentist killer case. I mean, these are cases that you can talk about for a millennia afterwards. And Danielle, I'm so sorry you're the subject of it, but let's be honest. And I think a lot of people have texted and said this now. If she hadn't picked on you, if she hadn't gone after Danielle, kick you in the junk Jurinsky, this could still be going on. Right? Like she could still be there lying about other moms taking away kids based on this stuff. I don't know, man, you know, there's a reason why God puts us in certain places at certain times. And Danielle, for you, and I don't think your story is finished being written yet, this is part of it.
I agree. And it took me a long time to really let that sink in. But the more I heard, you know, from people who came forward, just thanking me for going through what I went through and that I was strong enough to stand up and fight back. And I've really, that's resonated with me. And so that's why, you know, I'm going to go to court and hell's coming with me. And I have some words for Robin Nocetta. I have some words.
That's the new meme, Danielle. Someone is going to put your face on Kurt Russell's face from Tombstone, and it's going to be that screaming, you tell him I'm coming. That's going to be you right there. I think what your case also highlights, Danielle, is the system can fail, and it can fail epically if we just take for granted the checks and balances that are supposed to be in place there. But I think what we're seeing right now too is, we'll keep the verdict out there until we get the sentence on this thing, but the system can also work the way it's supposed to if it just does its job the way it's supposed to do it. You know, I think your case highlights both of those things.
I agree. I mean, just what I've been through alone, I've been through epic failures with the DHS system and an epic failure with, the justice system. I've watched both unfold now. And I just think to myself, George, when I couldn't get anybody to listen to me about these fake medical records. And yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and yeah, I'm not a doctor. I am an elected official, right? And I don't, that obviously doesn't matter at all in court, because still couldn't get anybody to listen to me. But what about other people, George? What about other people that have nothing, have no one, can't afford an attorney, I know how I have been treated through this. And I am even more empowered now, George, to fight for these other people because I have witnessed all of this firsthand.
Folks have texted in here different versions of this, but we need Danielle Barbie. So I don't know what you've done here, Danielle. When you go watch the movie, I want you to call back in so we can have a conversation about it. I'd be interested to know your take, especially as someone who's a conservative, whether or not you thought the message was too in your face or if it was just good entertainment. I've already described mine on the show, but I'd be interested to hear that. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to chat with us on this. And we'll obviously have you on again as these things continue to be updated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that Kellner hires you on and you take this case. I look forward to that.
Text him. Hey, when's the next court appearance for Mrs. Indicted on Friday?
Well, we have a pretrial conference on the 28th.
And then she's got to show up to court for bond on the indictment case soon. Like, is she back in Colorado yet?
No, so that's what we're waiting on. I think they're waiting to see if Janice Dudley's going to turn herself in or if they're going to start going and actively looking for her. And then we're waiting to see, are they going to be extradited, or are they going to fight extradition? If they fight extradition, obviously, as you know, George, they just sit in jail down there because they have to come up here to get their bond.
They could also, if she's going to fight extradition, it will cause her to fail to appear for that July 28th date you're talking about. That then generates another warrant for her arrest and probably the forfeiture of that bond. Probably the argument from the bonds person would be impossibility of performance based on the court. But nonetheless, who knows, man? Maybe this is her last ditch effort. I can't go to prison in Colorado if I don't leave New Mexico.
Right.
Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, superstar, her own Barbie action figure, and victim of Robin Niceta. Thanks for joining us, Danielle. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, George. Bye-bye.
See ya. Hey, listen, we're going to cut away for a break. Janice and some others are on the line at 303-696-1971. What do you think about this stuff? And if you got a reaction to Danielle's comments and what's going on in this case, there are so many failures here that are being revealed. In a way, it's not just the media, by the way. It's not just the courts. There were so many failures here. And I feel like, especially in the context of the Barbie conversation we started, if it wasn't Danielle, man, I don't know that we know any of this. Isn't that crazy? 303-696-1971. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Cannon. The Florida need is one.
on. We had her on because she is the outspoken victim / hero. She is, I'm telling you, she is screw around and find out Barbie or something. I mean, Danielle Jurinsky on here to talk about what's going on with the person who victimized her and tried to take her kid away from her because she was a revenge-filled hater who was trying to, I think, avenge her lesbian lover, chief of police out of Aurora. It's the only way you can explain this. Nonetheless, my thanks to Danielle. Getting some feedback from folks at 303-696-1971. Janice from Walsenburg, you're on 710. Janice, how are you?
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I think this Robin person is protesting too much about prison because that's the perfect place for her. She would love it there.
Why do you think she would love it? Nobody
Well,
really likes prison.
If she gets into population, lesbianism is endemic there. That's what everybody does.
Do you think then that would be something that she would think about or focus on? I gotta believe no matter your sexual orientation or not, the idea of being in a place where the decision making about when and with whom you have those relations is largely taken from you, that would be unsettling.
Oh, she'd catch up real quick, let me tell you.
You
Doesn't take long.
do you think this is a case where she has to go to prison?
Yeah, it's all the news and the fact that she's probably feeling a little guilt or something, I guess.
I don't think she feels guilty at all. Nobody expresses feeling guilty by trying to get away with it. Feeling guilty might be showing up and sheepishly saying, you know what? I lost my mind. I screwed up here. I should have never done what I did. I can't believe it. And throw yourself at the mercy of the court. Now, there isn't a single thing she could say ever where the court would be like, I believe you.
Mm. Also in prison, I met women whose children are taken away by social services for strange reasons, or social service people who took their children themselves. I had one roommate who lost her kids to a social service worker.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what's going on here.
Well, Janice, you always give us a great perspective from your experience, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that phone call. Janice's line is open, 303-696-1971. Joan, is it the Joan from Lakewood on 710?
Yes, it's Foya Barbie.
What a great self-reference there. Foya Barbie. I like it. What do you think about all this, Joan?
Well, first of all, I love Daniela. I supported her to get her elected. She is a superstar and probably the only person that I know that could stand up under all of this pressure.
Can you imagine being confronted by an investigative reporter of any kind, let alone someone who has the experience and the background and the credentials that Brian Moss has, and no wilting? She's not going to be shamed. She's not going to be guilted. She just comes right at him. This is garbage. This is fake. That's amazing.
It's about beyond amazing because I don't think he was very nice about the whole situation. And I'm trying to figure this out. Why, when you have some kind of injustice, that you can't get anybody to listen to you? I mean, this was a high profile thing. There's bunches of justice things that are happening around, like Jefferson County. I've been involved with this one murder case that I think they got the message maybe from this thing that happened, that they need to be a little bit stronger about how they do things. People aren't happy.
Joan, you touch upon one thing in particular that Billy and I just talked about afterwards, and that is, do we think the coverage of this, and it's gotten national coverage. Billy said he saw it on ABC and I think something else, but do you think the coverage would be more robust if, and I want you to picture this, if Danielle were a lesbian mother of a child, adopted mother of a child, and it was some evangelical Christian DHS investigator who came and invented this kind of a story to take the kid away? Do you think that the coverage would be different?
No. Well, right now, I don't think the media is in touch with anything. And it's spread to all the whole bunch of places. Oh, this indictment's happening. Oh, that indictment's happening. Nobody cares because they don't even believe anything the media thinks anymore. And this Brian Moss thing just is another big black mark on the media. And it's a sad thing because it's actually local media. And my folks actually think local media is better than national media in as far as investigating stuff. I don't think they are.
Well, I'm intrigued by, we've talked about this before, Joan, and that is the politicization of criminal justice. I don't think that's happening here. I think this is sort of the other aspect of it, and that is politics has perhaps impacted the criminal justice and media in such a way that they take these kinds of garbage stories at face value and don't treat them seriously. And that's where Danielle, being sort of this lighthouse, if you will, for other folks that might be running aground on this, is such a huge part of the story. But Brian just swallowed, it looks like, based off this kind of knee-jerk reaction that, my God, who would make up such a thing? Those preconceived notions are what leads to this kind of thing. The other thing you texted about, Joan, and I want to talk about this after we cut away for a break here in about 15 seconds, is you highlighted that a big-time metro area DA is not going to be around after this term.
Yep.
Well, that's it. With that kind of a tease, Joan, thank you, by the way. With that kind of a tease, I will just let you know there's a big-time metro area DA who has made the decision not to run for re-election, even though that person could have. We're going to talk about that when we come back. George Brockler on The George Show at 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brockler back with you here, 710 KNUS. In the final moments of the show here, I want to let you know, and we can, of course, talk about this another time. Denver District Attorney Beth McCann has announced as of, I guess the other day, July 20th, that she will not be seeking re-election to district attorney. She's the twice elected DA. That means by the time she finishes, she'll have served 8 years. We had 4 years of overlap while I was the DA, the 18th. Keep in mind that the state back in, I think, 96, it went active, has term limits for elected DAs. Only state in America that has term limits for DAs. I thought it was great when I ran because, of course, the person I replaced was the incumbent. But then after I became DA, I realized how much it sucked. Nonetheless, there's a provision inside the Constitution that allows each individual jurisdiction, each of the 22 that Colorado has, to either add terms to it or opt themselves completely out. And so what that has resulted in is that pretty much all of your single county jurisdictions have at least 3 terms for district attorneys, such as Denver and Boulder and Mesa and Weld, and Pueblo actually opted out altogether. Jeff Chostner, who's a friend, Jeff can serve, I think, for eternity. I don't know that he will, but Beth could have sought a 3rd term that would give 12 years there. She's decided not to. There are, as I understand it, to be 4 already candidates running for district attorney. I'm going to try to get each of them on the show to have a conversation about it. All Democrats, I presume. I don't think a Republican stands any chance of winning. I don't know about any unaffiliateds, but we're definitely going to try to have those DAs on. But one of the things that in the press release that Beth highlights is that they're proud to say we actively pursued training and education about diversity, equity, and inclusion, including asking, I think, all the prosecutors, maybe the staff, to read the new Jim Crow and talking about mass incarceration. And there's just no doubt that Beth is part of that next generation of socially woke prosecutors, the Soros-funded types, even if she never received it. That's the kind of thing. So she won't be running for DA. So in 2025, we'll have somebody new to helm. So a new mayor, new district attorney. It's going to be a new day for Denver. We're going to follow it here. Now, listen, stick around. There's 2 stories I want to get with you when we come back. We've got clips for each. One of them involves a guy who's on Salem all the time. George Brockler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take
George Brockler back with you here. Final hour of the Monday show on the George Show 710 KNUS. I'll be out doing a little bit of military business tomorrow through Friday. We're going to have Big John. We'll have Pete. We'll have Jeff. I think we have Pete again in that order coming up. And then I'll be back in the saddle with you, me, and Billy on Monday, the 31st of July, which I can't believe, last full month of summer for us in terms of kids not being in school. I can't believe that. That's just mind blowing. But there we are. Now, listen, there's been stuff that's gone on regarding the prosecution of Donald J. Trump out there in Florida. And you know that there was an indictment. Jack Smith has been much maligned by folks on the far right for being a political prosecutor. I'm not convinced yet. I haven't seen anything. He seems conservative lowercase c to me in terms of his tactical approach to this documents case. But that remains to be seen what happens. Nonetheless, Trump's attorneys have gone to the judge who was randomly assigned to this case, Judge Eileen Cannon. You'll remember Judge Cannon made a ruling or so that got crushed by the appellate court back during the underlying case involving search warrants and some other stuff regarding Donald Trump. So most of the folks in the Trump camp and the media reported on it as, hey, this is the worst judge possible for the Biden administration because she has shown herself to be inclined to be very pro Donald Trump in the past. We commented on that. I said it remains to be seen, but the risk I thought that it faced was she was so maligned in the media based off of that earlier ruling that she might push back the other direction. And now I think some people here, especially in MAGA world, feel like she has, I don't know what the right word is, failed the president or has shown her true colors or is no longer trustworthy as a Trump appointee judge. And she was a Trump appointee judge. And here's how that happened. Trump's attorneys have said, hey, super complicated case. There's no way we can be set for a trial in December. Just can't do it. And that's what the prosecution had asked for. We want to go to trial in December. Now, December's still late in the political game for president, but it's still early enough, though, that there's plenty of time for people to make decisions about, listen, August, I know we're going to have our first presidential debate, whether Trump participates or not. But by December, there's still campaign left. There's still decisions that can be made, and the nomination hasn't been sewn up by then. So the prosecutors say, hey, we want to go to trial in December. And then Trump's attorney said, no, thank you. We would like to have the trial scheduled for after the 2024 election. Well, Judge Eileen Cannon out there said, well, one, we're going to have the trial in my home courthouse in Fort Pierce, Florida. That's about 2.5 hours north of Miami. And the benefit, I think, for Donald Trump is, if you've read anything on this, those are pretty Trumpy counties. Those counties are going to produce the jurors for this trial. And Trump won those counties by pretty hefty margins. So that's already a plus. But that's all been forgotten, by the way, by the detractors based on this next decision. Judge Cannon's decision was, I'm not going to have the trial in December, but I'm not going to delay the trial until the end of the election in November. I am instead going to set the trial for May of 2024. That's next May. Now, if you're doing the math, that's 10 months from right now. Plenty of time to prepare for trial, but also plenty of time to work your way through the presidential primary process. That has some people super upset. Now, the hearing itself was kind of contentious when it was argued, but this is the judge's decision. I'm going to take a middle ground between December and after the election, and I'm going to do May. I don't know if it was an intention to split the baby itself or if there was some tactical reason from the court standpoint to get it done then. The problem is any first trial setting is prone. I'm not a federal guy. I'm a state guy. Almost every first trial setting in state court is irrelevant. It's fake. They all get bumped for one reason or another, but very rarely, in my experience, does a big case go to trial on the first day that it's scheduled. So this then, if the trial were to get continued for legit reasons in May, there's still some runway before November. but there's also the opportunity to try to get all of the issues that could come up in terms of legal rulings, evidence, and all that hammered out before May. So it's not a dumb decision. That was my opinion. I'm just me, a lawyer guy. There are other smarter lawyer guys out there, one of whom is on this station all the time. His name is Mark Levin. He had a completely different and exercised reaction to Judge Cannon's decision to set the case in May instead of pushing it out past November. Billy.
Judge Cannon, in Florida, you let the country down. This trial should have been moved till after the election. You just gave your imprimatur and the imprimatur of the federal judiciary to the interference in this election.
Now that's, and he goes on, that's a lot more than that. And as you know, Mark, wicked smart guy, written a bunch of books, including on the Supreme Court. Very thoughtful. He's also spent a lot of shows this year hammering away at the FBI and the DOJ for what he believes is, and he just said it right there, is interference with the election. He said you let the country down. And I'll be honest with you, I am not interested in a judge at any level making any decision based on what they think the best interests of the attorney are. No judge is put in a position to do that. Maybe it's sentencing. Maybe it's sentencing to consider that as one of the factors. But I don't want a judge making a decision about when to schedule a trial based on the best interests of America, even if it's against a would-be former and would-be future president. The question I want to know from you, though, is, do you agree with Mark Levin or do you agree with Judge Cannon? Should the trial be held before or after the election? My opinion is got to be held before, because if Donald Trump wins, and I do think he could win, it will never be held afterwards. Never, ever, never. Right? I mean, if this guy gets elected, can you imagine a judge setting a trial for December of 2024 and Donald Trump wins the general election? We're now going to have a trial of a guy who's about to become untriable, because when he's the president of the United States, and I think we've seen that throughout history, but also most recently with Donald Trump, can't be prosecuted for these violations while he's the dude at the top of the pyramid right there as president. But this might create that weird window where guy wins the general election. And then we're going to have a trial where we try to convict this guy. And then what? Does the judge lose jurisdiction over him when he can you be the sitting sworn in president on January the 20th of 2025, and then your sentencing is for February, and the judge sentences you to a prison that, by the way, you administer? The Bureau of Prisons falls under the executive branch. Is that what happens?
You pardon yourself. That's what happens.
Or you pardon yourself?
Yeah,
Could you pardon yourself? Does anybody have any doubt that this guy would pardon himself? I don't. Of course he would pardon himself. So this trial cannot take place, in my opinion, after the general election. I mean, maybe if he loses, then we say, well, now he can be prosecuted. So the guy that ran against him is now going to continue to have the special, quote unquote, special prosecutor prosecute him after he loses. That is a horrible optic as well. Right now is and it's, by the way, it's an ugly thing. It's an ugly thing, and there are no victors in this. I've said this from the beginning. America doesn't come out on top no matter how this case turns out. But if you believe that the system is set up against the president and that this is some kind of a fake prosecution, then like Mark Levin, you think any delay is good. Because it's almost like every day above ground is a win. You know what I mean? Like, let's just keep this thing from turning into something else because we think it's election interference. Do you agree with that? Or do you agree with Judge Cannon? And frankly, one of the things Billy and I talk about off air, isn't there something to the idea that if this is legitimate in any way, shouldn't the voters get to have the answer to this before the election? And think about this, folks. What if Trump doesn't get convicted? I mean, whether it's a hung jury, and I don't think that matters, whether it's a hung jury or, my goodness, a straight up acquittal, isn't that the wind beneath his wings? Isn't that like giving him political steroids? After May or June or however long the trial wraps up in next summer, this guy walks away acquitted of charges where the jury saved him from the corrupt, nefarious grips of the Department of Justice. Holy narrative. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be big? But is that the concern? Or is the concern, I think he's going to get convicted. 303-696-1971 is our phone number. Ben from Morrison, you're on 710. Ben, what do you think?
We should absolutely have a court case before this goes into the general election. We should not prolong this. We shouldn't put it out later. I wish it was earlier. I wish it was the original December date that Jack Smith wanted. And I'm kind of upset that it's like been pushed out longer than it was, because I mean, based off the indictment, it looks like this guy did bad stuff.
Yeah, it does look like that, but I want to move away from the substance of the case for right now, because listen, dude could get acquitted, right? Like no indictment shows up and say, Squinty, maybe he did it. They all come out super strong with the best evidence they can. That's just how an indictment rolls. So let's presume for a moment the substance isn't important for this conversation and what is instead the procedure. I agree with you, Ben, that what has to take place is a trial before voters make a decision about whether to vote for this guy. But here's the other thing. Do you think anybody's mind is going to be changed by virtue of a conviction or an acquittal?
I don't think on the Trump MAGA cult base, like they're not going to change their mind because they're immune to facts. It doesn't matter. Like it wouldn't matter, for example, like if Hillary, they like throw things at like, well, Hillary Clinton didn't get indicted. Joe Biden didn't get indicted. Like if Hillary Clinton got indicted tomorrow, it wouldn't change their mind at all. They'd just find some other excuse.
But don't you find the same though for the anti-Trump crowd, that even if this guy were to wake up tomorrow and come out and say, hey folks, I've figured out a cure for cancer, it's ivermectin or whatever it is, and it turned out to be true, that those same people would be like, I don't care, I hate you.
I don't think as much. I really don't think as much.
The crowd that you're traveling in, man, I'd love to have a conversation with them, get them to call into the show, because the folks that I know that are anti-Trump, it wouldn't matter. This dude could change his position on abortion tomorrow. This dude could come out for DEI tomorrow. It wouldn't matter. They hate him as a human being, and there's nothing he could do that would change that. But I also think your point, though, is equally accurate, though, in terms of MAGA. I think this guy could do exactly what he said he could do in 2016. He could go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot someone dead, and these people would never hold him accountable for it.
Well, I think we have a lot more like things to back a lot of that stuff up on why we don't like him. He's sexually been convicted of that, and so
he was never convicted. He's never been convicted, man. And we got to use the right words, because the standard is different. He was held liable.
Preponderance evidence,
which is a much lower standard.
I know, but there's also 25 other sexual allegations against him. Like he's on tape admitting to a lot of this stuff and bragging about it on Howard Stern show. He gets to walk in on naked women, and like stuff is on tape. So like at a certain point, like it's like, did he actually do it? Maybe not. But like this guy seemed like a scummy character.
I get that he is unsavory, but for purposes of our discussion here, I would rather, I mean, what I appreciate about your position, Ben, is you would have rather seen the trial in December, which is what the prosecutors wanted. If only because I think it's information that the American public needs to know, even if the majority of them, and I do think it's the majority, would never change their opinions, whether it's a conviction or an acquittal. I do think there's enough voters out there who might have their minds changed. If he's convicted, they might be like, okay, I'm a Trump guy, but I'm not going to send a convicted felon who could be going to prison and who could then try to pardon himself. I'm not going to do that. I could see that happening. I could also see people who are like, holy crap, man, this dude really has had the federal government against him in a corrupt way from the word go. Here's the proof. Dude got acquitted. So I want this trial sooner rather than later.
But there's 10 or 15% of the people out there, because some people, you're not going to change their mind, no matter who they are, left or right. They're going to vote with them or against them, no matter what. But you're trying to persuade that 10 or 15%, and that's who's going to decide the election.
Yeah, interesting. Ben, I appreciate that that's true. And that 10 to 15%, if they're gettable, that's why we got to have it. Ben's line is open, 303-696-1971. Robert from Littleton, you're on 710. What do you think, Robert?
Morning, sir. after an exhaustive study of all 320 some odd million Americans, I've come to the conclusion that there's 127 people in this country with their mind changed. It doesn't
So
matter.
precise.
That's obviously hyperbole.
Yeah, I know.
But man, the vast majority of Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, either love Donald Trump or detest Donald Trump. And there is no middle ground on that. If he is convicted, and I think it's entirely likely that he could be based on the evidence that I've seen in the public sphere, there are 70 some odd million voting Americans that will say it was a corrupt verdict. It was a corrupt prosecutor. They bought the jury. This is all BS. They're just out to get him. It's a witch hunt. In the inverse, if he is acquitted, there are another 70 some odd million Americans, maybe more, that will say he bought the jury. He somehow got to a juror. This is BS. He's just getting away with his nonsense.
Or because of where the jury's being, pulled
exactly.
from.
They got a bunch of MAGA jurors outside of Palm Beach or wherever the hell the jurisdiction is down there in Florida. I don't think there are going to be very many minds changed at all, which is why I think that the outcome, purely from the public sentiment aspect, is immaterial.
But does that mean we do or don't have the trial before the election? What is your preference?
I personally think that we should have the trial before the election, because I think that facts matter. Okay, and if people want to, let's say he's convicted. Okay, we're going on the hypothetical. If people then want to say, I don't care, I'm voting for him anyway, well, then that is their choice. Okay, it is not a choice that I would agree with, but that is their choice. And they are making a fully informed decision that he has been convicted of X, Y, or Z, federal crimes, and they are choosing to vote for him anyway, or not. But they have to have that information at their disposal in order to make an informed decision. Other than that, you're guessing. Everybody's guessing. And so I think postponing until after the election is an absolutely stupid thing to do, because you brought up the perfect hypothetical earlier. What if we postpone and he is seated, sworn-in president? Let's say he wins, and then he gets convicted somehow.
Well, I don't think he'd be tried, but I think
I agree with you. They wouldn't have a trial at that point.
No.
Sitting president.
And Billy's point is, dude would pardon himself.
Ridiculously high.
Dude would pardon himself, man.
I agree with you. Here's the other hypothetical I want to pose to you, George, and this is probably a little outlandish, but what if he already did?
What do you mean?
What if he got himself a little pocket pardon and he's just been sitting on it to see if all of this goes away, and he doesn't ever have to break it out, but he goes to court, he gets convicted, and then he goes, oh, by the way, check this out.
So you mean like when he was president before, could he have like pre-pardoned himself?
Yeah. Why not? There's been blanket pardons before. Where presidents have literally pardoned somebody for all crimes charged and uncharged.
That's interesting. I'd have to be more of a pardons expert. Maybe we can find one, but I've never heard of that, man. I've never heard of somebody pre-pardoning themselves. Like, can you imagine, as one of the perks of being president, it's not just the lifetime Secret Service that you have around you. It's not just the lifetime pension. It's the idea that you can write yourself a little letter that says it's a get out of jail free card in perpetuity for anything I might do. I can't believe that would pass muster.
That's the thing, is it wouldn't be for anything he might do. It would only be for anything that he had done up to that point. You can't pardon an uncommitted
hang on then.
crime.
If that's the case, it wouldn't apply here. Because everything he's been accused by Jack Smith of doing took place after he left office.
But the foundation for it occurred before he left office. He didn't go back to the White House and get those documents.
No, but it's a good point to bring up, Robert. But remember, one of the reasons I think that Jack Smith was tactically smart here was he didn't accuse or indict the president of anything related to taking the documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. None of those things are part of the indictment. He only indicted him for, you had government property, you were asked for it to be returned, you refused to do it.
And you didn't. This is true. That's a good point that I hadn't taken into consideration.
Well, not many people do, man. And when I first read the indictment, it did not occur to me until after I had more conversations with others, including Billy. And I looked online. I'm like, you know what? This dude was sly. He was really smart. He was not.
Jack Smith ain't dumb.
No, he's not dumb. And he's not prosecuting him for the classified, declassified thing. He's like, I don't even want to fight that fight. I'm only going to fight over this fact This is government property. You had no ability to convert it to private. We asked for it back. You didn't turn it over. Gonna get you. Now, whether you think that's a legitimate basis or not is different, but very tactically smart on his part. Hey, man, Robert, thanks as always. Thanks for the great phone call. Got to cut away for a break. Robert's line is open, 303-696-1971. Lewis and the others, we'll get to some text too. We're going to continue to cover this topic. And then I got one more little bit of sound that I'll play for you before we wrap up the show for this Monday. It's George Brockwood on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Some of the texts coming in here. What about all of the apparent good evidence that shows all of the corruption of Joe Biden? Are voters supposed to just ignore that? It just seems like our justice system is so messed up that we are led to believe that one form of injustice is okay, but another isn't. The whole thing about Trump just feels like the left attempting to prosecute someone they don't want to have to run against. It's just so banana. Or actually, this is spelled banaba, which I like. That's a new fruit. Banaba Republic. Look, aside from the merits of what evidence may or may not exist on the Joe Biden thing, I will tell you that what's her name? Joe Morris, testimony that she gave in front of Congress. I watched some of that. Look, I'm convinced there needs to be a special prosecutor to look into the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden stuff. I'm convinced of that the current system isn't working. That the idea that we're going to rely upon the Delaware United States attorney, given the testimony of the two whistleblowers from the IRS, I don't find it trustworthy. It's not that it isn't accurate. It might very well be accurate. I don't trust it the way the system has gone down. I want to have somebody who has far more independence look into this. But having said that, I'm also not a person you're ever going to convince that, hey, because one person's wrong and they haven't been held accountable yet, we shouldn't hold the other person accountable, because you can't get me there. And maybe that's just the prosecutor in me, but I feel like there needs to be something else going on. So I appreciate that, but that doesn't answer the question. And the question is, if there's going to be a trial, and you may be of the mind, hey, there shouldn't be a trial. We should never have a trial. This is such garbage. I don't know how you know that. Right? Like, I can't know that without looking at the case. That feels very Phil Weiser to me. That feels like the same thing as, I'm going to sue all the opioid makers because I just know, based on things I've read in the media, I just know they're guilty. This is the other side of that. Based on what I've read, based on what I know, I absolutely think this is a garbage prosecution that shouldn't go forward. I'm sorry. I don't think you can really know that. And I don't think you can actually draw that conclusion based upon the indictment. Motives aside, that indictment, if it's true, pretty tight case, man. Pretty tight case. That's not the answer to this issue, though. The issue is, should the trial take place before or after the election? And if you say after the election, it means there ain't going to be no trial. I believe that. If you don't get the trial done before the election, there will be no trial. And if you're cheering for that, why? Would it be better to have an acquittal long before people have to decide upon who's going to be the Republican standard bearer or who should be president of the United States? 303-696-1971 is the number. Lewis from Aurora, you are on 710. Lewis, turn down the radio just a little bit, my man.
I don't have it on.
What was that feedback? That was weird. Were you talking to another radio station at the same time?
No, not at all.
Because nobody else takes calls. But anyway, go on, my man.
Well,
what do you think?
I wanted to say, you stole my thunder, and I believe, and you know, I voted for Trump twice, but I believe the trial should be before the election, and if he's acquitted or found not guilty completely, I mean, yeah, his campaign is going to be on steroids, and I think a lot of independents will say, you know what, I'm gonna vote for this guy. I mean, they came after him. Now, what is happening with the rest? The Georgia, the New York situation. Are they going to wait, if he gets acquitted on those, are they going to wait right before the election to do these trials again?
It's another great question. I don't know what the procedural delay is in the Manhattan prosecution, which is junk. I mean, I've been very clear about that from the beginning. Read the indictment, looked at Alvin Bragg's background and the things that he said during the campaign. In no way ever should that case have been brought at the time and in the manner it was. It was just dumb, and it's hyper political. Whether it goes to trial or not before the trial, I don't know. And the Georgia one, what the hell is she delaying for? Fannie Willis, the DA down there, what is she waiting on? Right? Like, is it more evidence, more indictment? Because the longer she waits, the more it appears like this is just about meddling with the election. So, yeah. And Billy's prediction is, Lewis, Billy's prediction is that indictment will drop in August. that could be early enough. I don't know. I'm interested in seeing that one too. I know everyone's going to say, hey, Fannie Willis, she's in the bag for the Dems trying to cripple the president. Maybe true. I just want to see the indictment. Don't you just want to read the indictment?
Yeah. And the thing is, what if Trump is again found not guilty, and then all this other stuff, and you mentioned it earlier with the other text about Biden. I mean, this stuff.
I know,
I
and
mean,
someone else just texted in. When will Joe Biden be indicted? He has more classified documents than Trump. Couple things. Well, remember, there's not going to be any indictment of a sitting president. We're just not going to have that. That Trump made that clear too. But let's pretend for a moment he was in a position to be indicted. He's definitely in a position to be investigated and potentially impeached. I believe that. But this claim right here, he had more classified documents, again, is not paying attention to what Trump. Well, and I don't know how many he had, but let's pretend. Yeah, but even if we did, even if we pretended it was 10 billion, it's the numbers irrelevant to the prosecution against Trump.
But the texter comes to a conclusion that's not valid based on the facts. He had 6.
He had, what is it, dozens of boxes parked by the Corvette or something like that?
Yes, but he had 6 classified documents. The boxes are irrelevant. Numbers are important.
Well, they're only important if you're saying, hey, I disagree with your claim. But in terms of our broader context, which is, does that make him as prosecutable as Trump? It does not, because he's not being prosecuted for classified documents. He's being prosecuted for possessing government documents. But Lewis, if you had your druthers here and this prosecution has to move forward, let's just pretend it does. Does the trial take place before or after the election?
Oh, I want it before.
And why?
I want it before. Why? Because I want to know, gee, if he's guilty, and again, I haven't made a decision on the primary yet on what's coming up. I like Tim Scott, but I haven't made a decision yet. I haven't donated any money. I don't do that until after the primary, so I know who's really running for the presidency. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want it before the election. I want it, as the judge said, in May. Let's get it. Let's do it. And so if he's found guilty, okay, he's out of the picture. He's out of the picture. I'm sorry. I will go with someone else, like Tim Scott. I would. But if he's found innocent and not guilty, my goodness, what's going to happen with the people on the left? You heard it. Yeah. They're going to go wild. They're going to say he bought them, whatever. I mean, these news media are going to lose. They lost their mind anyway, but it's going to be further. But the thing is, what if he does get found guilty, okay, and also Biden gets impeached, okay? Maybe not convicted because the Senate is run by the Democrat, but he gets it. We got two candidates that are worthless.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why the polling, and Billy just found some more recent ones, the polling shows that the vast majority of Americans, it's a yawn fest for them to have the Trump-Biden thing. They'd love to have something different. Lewis, by the way, great conversation. Thank you for calling us. 303-696-1971 is the number. Let's go to Jesse in Durango. Jesse, what are your thoughts on all this?
Hey, George, good Monday to you. Well, I'm in Greece anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wanted to do a follow-up on Robert's comment.
Yeah.
And
tell me.
I wanted to say, okay, so he's probably calling it, he wanted to call it maybe AKA a ace pardon out of the sleeve, and if Trump were to do that and he's hiding an ace pardoning on his sleeve, then later on, Biden's going to use his, to pardon his son no matter what he does and stuff. And imagine all the Obama ace that he's got in his sleeves to use.
What do you think? Well, wait a minute. I don't know that Trump has any ability to take away all the problems that he's got going on right now in his current capacity. But I do think when he becomes president, he could pardon himself. I don't know of anything in the law that says he couldn't do it. We've never seen it, but I don't think he could be prevented from doing it.
Right. But like the way that Robert said that he's probably got one hidden up his sleeve waiting to use it. So, I mean, all the former presidents are going to want to use theirs, and Clinton's going to say, hey, I haven't used mine yet.
Yeah, but I think it's unlimited. That's what I think. I don't think there's a limitation of what they could do. Do you want to see the trial, Jesse, take place before or after?
I want to see the trial before, because and if Musk and that other guy from Facebook, they can also put it on pay-per-view too.
Yeah, interesting. Jesse, thank you for that call. I appreciate it, man, especially all the way out from beautiful Durango. Let's cut away for a break, and then we'll come back and get Bruce and the other callers at 303-696-1971. It's George Brockler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Little Pearl Jam here to finish us off. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Going right back to the phone lines. Bruce from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think, Bruce?
Good morning, George.
Morning.
First, by way, I am going to give you a bit of background just so you and any listeners know where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I am a registered Republican. I'm not overly thrilled with the Republican Party right now. That being said, I did not vote for Donald Trump in either presidential election.
Interesting. Who did you vote for?
In the first election, I voted for Evan McMullin,
Yeah, I've
and that
heard
was
that,
a tactical decision at the time. In the 2020 election, I did not vote for president.
Are you sure you didn't vote for Kanye?
Pretty sure, but you know how mail-in ballots go.
Great answer. So tell
Okay.
now with that background, tell us your thoughts.
Let me give you one other bit of background. I am retired military. I
Which
have
branch?
handled Navy. Go Navy.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I have handled documents, as you have,
Yeah.
at the level of classification that Donald Trump allegedly has.
Yep.
My personal belief is that if even a fraction of what's in the indictment or what we are hearing in the news media is true about his possession of those classified documents is true, he is guilty. Not should be, he is guilty and should be spending a fair amount of time in prison.
Well, remember this though, and you and I'll talk about the classified thing for a second, a moment, but he's not being prosecuted for possession of the classified documents. It was really smart by Jack Smith. It is a focused prosecution on the fact that it's government property that he did not return. But to your point, yes, in handling those documents, what you and I know is it is a different universe, apparently, for folks in uniform who handle TSSCI and documents like that, and the president, because there's no, hey, we drifted out of our office with this, or, oh, I just happened to leave my CAC card in the computer. Those are things that are career enders. You know what I mean? Like, and prosecutable. Whereas this guy seems to have like stuffed them in his pants and just basically thought about declassifying them. And that was all that it took. I mean, dang.
Exactly. And I do understand the nuance between what I articulated and what Jack Smith is prosecuting him on. But it's all part of the same picture. And my statement stands. All of that being said, asking you from the point of view of a prosecutor, let's say it goes to trial. Let's talk about Miami or the Florida trial.
Right.
Let's say he goes to trial, regardless of when it occurs. What would be the circumstance if there is a jury nullification situation that results? What's your thoughts on that?
One, how would we know? Right? Like my guess is if you're going to answer the voir dire questions, the jury selection questions, honestly, you'll be ferreted out through that. But if your goal is to secret yourself and your thoughts and all this other stuff to make it onto a jury, and you got to know people are scouring your social media pages, they're going to look at your background. That's what we would do. They're going to try to find you out. But I'm opposed to jury nullification. I don't know why we have laws if we're just going to allow jurors to simply decide we just don't think it should apply here. But nonetheless, could it happen? It could. Could it happen en masse? I don't know. Could you get 12 people to sit around a table and say, hey, everybody, I know we took oaths, but let's ignore them. Let's not apply the law to the facts because we hate the outcome. That's a tall order.
You know what? And your comment is correct. That just popped into my brain as you were talking. Jury nullification is when the whole jury votes not guilty. The O.J. Simpson.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was thinking more of a circumstance where one or two
that could happen
on the jury.
It would go unexpressed at least until afterwards, but I could see that happening. But maybe it's just to hang it. I mean, listen, if this is a one-shot case, if this jury hangs, I just don't think it could be retried again. Independent of any timing, independent of how the election turns out, if they pick a jury, if Jack Smith picks a jury and this guy gets a hung jury, I think it's over.
That's exactly my concern.
Yeah.
The interpretation will be on one side of the aisle, he's not guilty. On the other side of the aisle, our justice system, whatever.
Yeah.
They'll form a mob to deal with Jack Smith.
That's interesting.
And see, you had You had that situation with the Aurora trial.
Yeah, a little
Aurora
bit.
movie.
Although with us, it was a little bit different. Bruce, I got to cut you loose here for, thank you, by the way, go Army. I know you'll appreciate that. Go Army. Bruce, I appreciate that. It was a little bit different for Aurora, but Billy has some groundbreaking analysis of this. I wanted to give him time to reveal how this will end up being the end of the Republican Party as we know it.
Yeah, I think that Judge Eileen Cannon, unfortunately, has set up an enormous minefield that nobody on the conservative side of the aisle I have heard address this yet, and I am shocked. Lewis almost got us there. Lewis, earlier in this phone call, talked about when he donated to a potential Republican candidates. He says he donates after the primary. This trial date is set May 20th. Now, let's assume, as you said, George, that it's going to be moved at least 1 or 2 weeks. So we're probably talking beginning of June. How many primary contests is the GOP holding post-June? I'll answer it for you. 4. South Dakota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Montana, none of which have
Wait
enough
a minute.
votes.
When's Colorado's? We have a primary in June.
I think it's earlier than that. I think.
Our state primary, unless they changed it,
Even
man,
then.
and I'm an idiot. That's June.
Okay, I may have missed that one on the list. But again, you add 5 in. That's not enough.
That might
votes.
not be the presidential primary, though.
Yeah, but I
that
looked for
could be
presidential
different.
primary.
Yeah.
So, but what I looked at is I saw 4, possibly 5th with North Dakota. They're kind of up there. The issue being that the GOP could have already had enough votes for Donald J. Trump to be named their nominee for president in July while he's still going through trial and could be convicted. They could be stuck with a convicted candidate.
I just wonder
for
how
president.
much it matters. I think it matters to some and enough to make a difference in the election. But
It's gonna matter in the middle wiggle room people that you need in order to win, and that's the problem. That's why Eileen Cannon has set up a minefield. Nobody's addressing it. She, in my opinion, she has screwed the GOP.
Well,
in the
we may
primary
find
contest.
that out. Billy, au revoir. I will see you a week from today, listeners as well. Listen, it's going to be John, Pete, Jeff, and Pete filling in. Please abuse them accordingly with the phone calls and the texts. I'll talk to you next week. George Brockler, 710 KNUS.